Today's story is about Ryu, a police officer with an enormous talent for picking fights. When a delinquent goes to the police station to cause trouble, he awakens a tremendous power that makes him stronger the more he gets beaten. This is a journey full of mysteries. The protagonist grows stronger over time and meets masters along the way. But before we get to the good part, let's start from the beginning. In Seoul, with dozens of cars passing along the roads, they arrive at an old structured house, and the bodyguards protect a man in a suit who gets out of the car. Another man standing in front of the mansion welcomes him, and from that point on, he would be escorting the suited man. The guards get irritated upon hearing this, saying they are the security team of the blue team, until the suited man starts walking toward the other group, telling all his bodyguards to stay there, because from this point on, he would move alone. The mansion's butler simply smiles upon hearing that. The rain falls over that mansion as the butler guides him to a garden. A man comments that the air there feels nice. Since the weather has been bad lately, he brought this garden home and feels refreshed. He then welcomes Mr. Choi Hyun-seong, the president. They stare at each other, and the man says that Choi must be frustrated, and that is why he's in his garden. So he hopes he can enjoy the atmosphere and return home. Upon hearing that, the president's only decision is to bow, paying respect to the president of the Crimson Moon, Shin Yang-woo. And for now, the government will treat them as an inviolable existence and grant absolute authority. But he begs him to mobilize the elite to prevent anyone from taking his life. Yang-woo bursts into laughter and says he has made a wise decision, and with the current proposal, the Crimson Moon will accept. Elsewhere in the city, a civilian runs to a police station begging for help. Because gangsters are trying to take his life, he tells the officers to hurry. A police officer tells him to calm down and tries to find out what happened, until a hand grabs the civilian's head, slamming him to the ground with ease. The man warns him that he should have paid his debt, and yet he still ran to a police station. But the Crimson Moon has no fear of them, so he says his client made a good choice. That civilian tries to say he'll pay in 2 days, but the gangster hits him for being 3 months late, so he should stop stalling and take the proper path, or else pay with his body. The gangster gets up and apologizes for the trouble, but the police officers just accept it without complaint. Then the man says his goodbye, until the protagonist tells him to wait, approaching slowly. The gangster asks what he wants, but the protagonist cuffs his hand, telling him he is under arrest for robbery and bribery. That gangster is surprised and says this is ridiculous. Shaking the protagonist's head, he asks if he's a rookie. Then he calls General Min Chaidong and asks if he's not going to educate him properly. His boss starts shouting that Ryo is wrong and should release him, but the protagonist tells him to give his left hand so he can cuff him too. The gangster punches the protagonist, making Ryo crash into a table. He tells him to release the cuffs, but Ryo stands up, warning that if it doesn't work that way, he'll use force. That manager gets irritated, delivering a knee strike that Ryo manages to dodge, but it was just a feint, and the real strike is a kick to his jaw. Ryo falls unconscious as the man tells him to try again. The gangster is irritated and keeps beating the protagonist for a long time. Then, after that, he steps back, saying he wasted his energy for nothing and tells them to remove the cuffs. In addition, they should be careful with recruits and educate this man properly. But luckily for the officers, he didn't take his life, though they should take care of his unit for at least 6 months. Then he turns to leave until a subordinate notices something and calls his boss. That gangster turns back, a bit surprised. Seeing the protagonist stand up, wondering who in the world he is, a few months later, doctors treat Ryo, who has 38 wounds, 9 of them fatal. They try to revive him from the heart attack he is having, using medication and pumping. But Ryo spits blood as his heart stops, and the doctors complain that they lost their patient. But laughter fills the room, with a man saying that the potential Shin Yang-woo spoke of really exists, so he will repay the grudge for having taken the life of his wife and daughter. Another doctor asks why Kyung-hoon is laughing when the patient just lost his life and the blame is his. The doctor calls him an idiot while something happens behind them. That body of Ryo had gotten up from the bed, back to life. Kyung-hoon shouts that Bastard was no different from a zombie, so they should take him to a hospital before he regains consciousness. But before that, he would develop a medicine that makes him younger with this ability. Back to the present, the gangster goes flying out of the police station, crashing into a wall and becoming gravely injured. A hooded guy stops next to him and says it was fun because he was stronger. This Ryo Sai-hwan thing must be really fun. A few hours later, the station settles down and the officers comment that Ryo was fine after being hit, until the chief approaches the man, telling him it was dinner time. While eating soup, the chief apologizes to Officer Ryo, because he ended up giving up on teaching the gangsters a lesson thanks to the fears of the higher-ups. Ryo comments that they have families and knows they aren't ordinary people. The chief says that after hearing about the Crimson Moon, his stomach turned. Ryo remains silent until nightfall. Elsewhere in the city, A policeman complains about the weather and being an annoying bastard, until he sees the crowd of that gangster's group up ahead. Those delinquents were smiling and holding knives. The policeman calls for the general, and his colleagues don't understand, until the gangster orders everyone to leave that police station. The men rush toward the station, stabbing some officers. Everyone screams in panic while a policewoman grabs a gun and threatens to shoot. Unable to do it, she's struck several times. The general only watches, crying as a delinquent approaches him, but when trying to stab him, Ryu interrupts with a punch, then warns that if they want to survive, they should get out of there. The gangster calls out to Ryu and says they met again, because this time he was finished, as he wouldn't lower his guard again. Ryu wouldn't be able to handle so many people, so the gangster makes a sick grin, warning that he'd give him a good beating. Ryu charges at him with a punch, hitting one of his subordinates and then striking others in succession. Ryu runs through the delinquents thinking he was in big trouble, because he expected to have the same strength as before, but his body wasn't changing, so he needs to be hit by all of them this way, ending up being struck by a knife. But the delinquent steps back, shouting that he definitely hit his vital point. On top of a building, someone watches everything. The hooded guy thinks he won't step in immediately because he must have something against the Crimson Moon, then says the doctor was really bad to him while watching Ryu Saiwan. The delinquents gang up on Ryu, wondering how this guy was so physically strong and if he was even human. The gangster approaches Ryu, saying that in reality he was only just getting started. With the chief trapped in his arms, he threatens the man because he wouldn't be able to handle this, but because of him, these innocent lives were finished. All of this happened because he got involved without knowing his place, while the chief begs for help. Ryu tells him to stop it, because his general was taking care of his elementary school daughter after losing his wife, and he wasn't his target. The gangster replies that for sure he would lose his life today, but should watch this. Then he ends the general's life, warning that he'd send everyone there to hell. However, Ryu didn't need to be sad, because he would follow his path soon, but it would be even more painful for him to have the same fate. Ryu shouts Taekyung's name because he would take his life and keeps yelling. Taekyung tells him to hold on a bit because he'd send him to hell himself, then quickly approaches to strike with his knife, until one of the subordinates suddenly hits the wall. Another delinquent wonders what was happening, but soon warns his boss that he was behind him. The hooded man walks through with everyone defeated and a macabre smile on his face, then advances toward the Crimson Moon members, ending their lives in just a few blows. Taekyung trembles in fear, saying that since yesterday, he keeps seeing absurd things, calling that man a bastard. Taekyung jumps toward him, yelling that the Crimson Moon was no joke, but the hooded man just grabs the knife with his hand, then throws the shards toward Taekyung. The gangster wonders how he did that. That man only replies that it made no sense to let people like him know, then striking Taekyung in the stomach and making him kneel, bleeding. He walks toward Ryu, saying he heard about him being strong, but he looked to be in a terrible state now and wanted to know what was the point of that pathetic gaze. As the rain fell, a storm began to form in that place. Leaving the hospital, the hooded young man reflected for a moment, saying it didn't matter whether Ryu lived or lost his life, but even with many enemies, he still wouldn't be able to defeat even the weakest boss of the Crimson Light. He wondered if with just a bit more strength, Ryu could be capable of defeating Yang Wu. A few days earlier, in a prison, a man walks with guards as the inmates make noise, booing him. That was Kang Min, known as Poison Honey, a high-level assassin who took the lives of 18 people 10 years ago. Even after committing those terrible crimes, he showed no remorse, claiming he had slain demons and was sentenced to death. But today, he was going to be executed anyway, in a dimly lit room with a single pill on the table. The doctor asks what he's waiting for, since he should swallow it immediately. Kang Min asks if he's supposed to die just by swallowing that pill, since these methods were more lenient now, compared to when they used to inject lethal poison or send you to the electric chair. Kang Min says he'd end up dead either way as he grabs the pill. He was tired of dealing with assassins from the Crimson Moon, so he would just go to hell in peace, drinking the pill. After a few seconds, the effects manifest. Something inside Kang Min's body snaps, and he starts choking. He collapses to the ground soon after, screaming in agony. Kang Min demands to know what that bastard did to him, and what he had done to his body. Now young again, back to the present, Kang Min thinks that Yang Wu now is different from a decade ago, and he couldn't handle him without Ryu Saiwan. Even if the fourth generation of villains attacked him all at once, they wouldn't be able to touch a single strand of his hair. Kang Min says it's a joke, because now his power was fully restored. With this body, he would drag Shin Yang Wu to the Reaper from 10 years ago. In Yang Wu's mansion, he drinks tea and notes it's quite good, because the taste was deeper, and he tells his butler Sanjin that he's improving. A cup of tea with his brother was a real luxury in this world. Sanjin replies that he keeps embarrassing him with such compliments. Kang Min was watching the scene from underwater, thinking he didn't belong at a tea party, because he had let him escape last time, and now broke through a security net to come without being detected by the radar. so he was curious about what kind of expression Yang Wu would make upon seeing him, until the leader of the Crimson Moon senses someone's presence. He stands up and walks to the side as Sangjin asks what happened. Kang Min hides behind a rock, but Yang Wu uses his lightning ability, stopping him from breathing. Kang Min thinks that was the monster skill that enhanced the body, reaching an improbable state of power, and if he doesn't escape now, he'll lose his life. Sangjin asks if his leader felt anything. Yang Wu smiles and says it was nothing, but he sensed the energy of poison honey for just a second. Still, there's no way someone sentenced to death like him could be walking around freely. He then asks Sangjin if he's heard about the 4th generation of villains. Yang Wu explains that like him, they are talented individuals. Sangjin asks if they were on the same level as him, but the Crimson Moon's leader says he almost lost when the 4 of them joined forces. He wasn't personally interested in them, and they split off into his 4 arch-enemies, but he bets that if not for that, the Crimson Moon wouldn't exist. That was why he completely broke them so they could never return. Kang Min screams that Kyung Hoon was a damn fraud. His body had turned old again, and so he yells that he's going to kill him. In that ultra-high security prison, Kyung Hoon eats a little at his desk. He complains that he paid 100,000 won to have that black bean noodle delivered, and it wasn't even that good, but says he's finished eating and Kang Min can come in. The man falls to the floor, calling Kyung Hoon a bastard for hiding the fact that he'd turn old again. Kyung Hoon replies that he didn't say anything because he hadn't asked, but Kang Min slams the doctor's head on the table, saying this time he's going to kill him. Kyung Hoon responds that the medicine is unstable and he needs to keep taking it to stay young, and Kang Min yells that he's trying to turn him into a slave. But the doctor laughs at him for thinking he would give that away for free. Kang Min keeps pressing the doctor's neck, until he hears some shouts with a blue-haired man standing at the door. Kang Min calls him Demon Light, Lee Dongha, and asks if he woke up from his vegetative state. But that man just charges forward and grabs Kang by the neck, charging once more with a punch that Kang Min dodges, trying to strike Dongha in the abdomen in return. However, he notices that the effect of the drug has worn off and his strength has vanished. His face is grabbed by Dongha and slammed into the floor. The doctor just laughs at that and asks how he feels after reuniting with Yeon Woo, and that was the reason he had told him to unlock the potential of Ryu Sai-hwan. The next morning, at a funeral, Ryu stands facing the gravestone of all the fallen officers. People comment that he was released from the hospital in a week after being struck dozens of times, but he wasn't even crying for his companions. Kang Min eats calmly at a table, remarking that the spicy meat at funerals is awful, then drinks a cup of sake and turns toward Ryu. People were talking about the gangsters being bastards who took their lives, until news suddenly arrives, saying that Oh Taekyung, who was suspected of committing the crimes from last week, had just been released after a full investigation since his alibi was confirmed. Ryu mutters in anger until he's hit on the head with a spoon. A little girl tells him to bring her father back. Because of him, she lost her father, so he should take responsibility and capture those monsters. Ryu thinks to himself that the girl shouldn't worry because he will take Taekyung's life. Leaving that place, an unfamiliar voice calls Ryu. Kang Min says they meet again. The protagonist doesn't recognize him. That man says he's Ryu's savior, and then the young man remembers, but bumps into his shoulder while thanking him for that, and warns that he was busy. Kang Min asks if he was going to run away like that, because he understands he wants to crush Taekyung now, but assures him that if he goes now, he would be crushed with a single punch, and Ryu tries to threaten him. Kang Min just moves his fist at incredible speed, stopping it right in front of Ryu. The protagonist is stunned because he couldn't even see his movements. Kang Min says that if Ryu can land even a single hit, he'll let him go and help him defeat Taekyung. Ryu tells him to get out of the way, because if he interferes again, he won't leave unscathed. Kang Min replies that he's looking forward to that, and if he wants to do it, then just go ahead. The protagonist charges to throw a punch, but Kang dodges effortlessly, asking if the strike was in slow motion, then tells Ryu to watch closely, elbowing his face and then punching him in the face again, and orders the young man to increase his speed, because he wasn't in the right state of mind for thinking he needs to be hit to get stronger. Because of that terrible mindset, he thinks it's normal to be struck, but he can't even land a hit on him, calling him pathetic and wondering what Dr. Min sees in him. But a fist comes close to Kang's face, and he dodges, saying he's surprised. Ryu yells that he'll take his life, while lunging repeatedly until he lands a hit on Kang. The old man asks if his advice went in one ear and out the other, because he should think before attacking. Then throws a punch at Ryu, but this time, the protagonist manages to block it. Kang is met with a knee to the chin, falling to the ground right after. The old man tells him to stop, complaining that he bit his tongue, then spits blood on the ground, saying he thought he was just an ignorant bastard rushing at him. Ryu tells Kang to get lost because he hit him as he had said, but the old man says he won't let him go so easily, because first he needs to practice a bit as he takes his fighting stance. In a shady shop, the Crimson Moon members congratulate Tae-kyung with drinks. The manager says Chinese food goes better with Kyoling, and it was a fine world to live in because they weren't bound by anything and nothing could touch the Crimson Moon. They shouldn't be afraid of anything, but Tae-kyung says that either way. He wants to know how to deal with that bastard, and his subordinates remember him. Tae-kyung says it was the first time he was hit like that and thought his heart would explode, and wants to know if, like the president, he has the power of Glia, until a subordinate's body comes flying through the door. People wonder what happened there and how Ryu wasn't in hell yet. The protagonist repeats that he's going to take his life today. All the gang executives wonder who he is, but Tae-kyung trembles in fear, saying he's just a lowly police insect who dared to come here alive. Then he orders them to kill this bastard all at once, and the subordinates rush forward. Ryu throws punches at them, knocking each one down with his crushing blows. They beg for help in front of Tae-kyung, who starts sweating cold in fear. Kang Min thinks Ryu is extremely reckless, but still good to watch, since he was dominating everyone with just a single punch. Ryu warns that Tae-kyung is next and tells him to come over. The gangster yells at him not to look up at him like that because he's not a manager for nothing. Then he punches Ryu with brass knuckles, warning that this time he'll kill him. The young man is struck several times, and Kang Min wonders if he's really learned anything. Ryu grabs the brass knuckles and says the general's daughter sends her regards, so he'll make sure to return the favor, clenching his fist with all his strength, and delivering one last punch to Tae-kyung, sending him flying through the shop's glass window. People see the gangster's body falling from the building and shout to call an ambulance. Kang Min only comments that he's still alive because this building isn't tall. He's just very lucky. Tae-kyung gets up as an old man asks if he's alright, but he refuses help and runs away. Ryu says he needs to capture him, leaving Kang a bit incredulous, asking why. Because this brat is speaking informally to him when he's 20 years older, the protagonist says he looks like he's his age. The old man complains about his insolence but sighs and drops the subject. Still, he won't hit someone covered in blood, commenting that Ryu is really a zombie, since after all that, he's still fine. The protagonist turns, saying he's leaving, but Kang explains he must be running to Park In-soo, the regional district boss. Besides, Park In-soo is an alpha-class Glia talent, and Ryu asks what a Glia is. Kang explains that most Crimson Moon executives are Glia masters, and In-soo has the lowest talent level among them. At the Red Moon's money agency, Tae-kyung kneels as someone calls him an idiot, asking if he was attacked by a cop and ran here, then stands up and asks if he's really supposed to believe that, and that all this happened because of a mere police officer. Tae-kyung tries to defend himself, saying he hit him several times and nothing happened, but he gets a kick to the chest. In-soo asks if he should just kill him to avoid trouble, and Tae-kyung begs for forgiveness. The leader says that's exactly why they aren't master-level executives. Then he presses a phone, ordering them to call the members. That crazy cop will find justice, and they'll move Sector D to handle this. Tae-kyung notices something beside him and calls In-soo to see the cameras. Ryu is fighting in one of the recordings, and the boss asks if that's the idiot bastard. Then he orders his subordinates to stop him. The protagonist lands a blow on a Red Moon member. Facing the others, with basic punches he knocks them down. More members arrive, telling each other to stop this guy. But Ryu manages to stop anyone from getting close to him. Kang claps, saying it seems like he attacks first before being attacked, and the activation is inevitable. Some henchmen manage to grab Ryu and start hitting him repeatedly. They stomp on Ryu, saying he's useless. In-soo sighs as he watches from a distance and calls for Tae-kyung, asking if he was defeated by this weak bastard, and the gangster tries to deny it, because this bastard was only just starting at that point, and In-soo says that's exactly the point, but it was all over until they hear a scream on the camera. The subordinates start running, calling for reinforcements, and In-soo asks what's wrong with them. Tae-kyung trembles in fear, saying he changed again. Ryu was dragging a subordinate's body, telling him to come with him. In-soo wonders who this guy is, while Ryu shouts once again for Tae-kyung to come to him quickly. Some gang members were working until they received a red alert. They're told to stop everything and welcome the visitors, so they head there. Ryu sighs slightly at the sight of the new group. The gangsters face him with a smile, but the protagonist tells the weak ones to leave, because the only person he wants to fight is Tae-kyung. Those gang members rush to attack Ryu, but the protagonist drops them all with just a single blow, and with extreme ease. In-soo wonders who this guy was since his body had grown and if he was really a cop, wanting to know if this man was also a Glia user. Tae-kyung trembles in fear while In-soo says he's curious because there are no Glia users outside of the Crimson Moon. Kang asks what the loser was doing, because he had told him to watch while he grows, but now he can't even stand up. Then asks why not stop fooling around and go home, but Ryu replies that Kang should go first, because he wouldn't return before defeating that bastard. Kang warns that it's been a while since he's been out of breath, and if he keeps going like that, he'll lose his life. But Ryu yells that he'll send him to hell if he interferes, startling Kang a little. The man thinks he's getting a bit scary, but if he really wants to end up in a coffin, he won't stop him, so he should go ahead. Entering an elevator, Ryu rides up, coming face to face with some gangsters who are immediately greeted with punches to the face. The elevator door closes, and as time passes, he reaches the 5th floor. Ryu steps out completely out of breath. Insu asks if that's not too much for a police officer, and wants to know how this guy made such a mess in his office just for one man. Ryu asks if he's Park Insu, and the man introduces himself, but the protagonist only says he's there for Oh Taekyung, so he'll let him go. Insu smiles, saying he's been living a good life, punching Ryu in the face while asking why he was making him mad. The protagonist pulls back from the blow but plants his feet firmly on the ground. Insu charges again and grabs his neck, saying he doesn't look like an ability user while striking his neck several times. Ryu drops to his knees with little he can do, and Insu says his earlier desperation had vanished, but that bastard would never get up again until Taekyung notices something approaching. Kang says it's pathetic, but Taekyung warns the manager to be careful because this one is the most dangerous. The old man comments that no matter how much spirit he has, he can't just keep increasing it endlessly. Insu tries to get his attention, but Kang thinks he wants to cut Ryu down right away. But if he loses his life, the medicine will disappear, so he says his nose only works well because of that. The manager gets irritated and charges at him with a punch. Kang just dodges and counters with a punch to the ribs, shattering Insu's bone. The man drops to the floor, asking who he was and if he was an ability user. Their fists clash once again, breaking Insu's hand. Kang says he was an extra, while Insu writhes in agony with his broken hand, wondering who the hell this bastard was. He screams about his hand while asking who the hell he was. Kang readies a punch, questioning why he should tell him, and then hits Insu in the face, making him fall to the floor in disbelief that strong people exist outside the Crimson Moon. Taekyung runs to his manager, begging him to wake up. The subordinates abandon their posts, running away. Taekyung just thinks he forgot about this monster who was able to defeat Park Insu, then kneels, asking to be spared because he doesn't want anything from him. Kang tells him to stop begging because it wasn't his revenge, making Taekyung think he's safe. But at that moment, Ryu gets up, calling for him and warning he'll take his life. Taekyung screams, asking why he's doing this, and keeps trying to hit the protagonist, telling him to get out of there, while Kang admires the fight, saying it looked like a dogfight. But it wasn't bad because one of the two would be left standing there. While Ryu grabs Taekyung, the gangster tries to break free, saying he's going down. Ryu bites his ear, tearing a piece off. Taekyung kneels in pain while the protagonist breathes heavily. The gangster tries to insult him and says he'll take his life, but Ryu punches him in the face, knocking him to the ground. He repeats the blow dozens of times until he can't anymore. Kang watches this scene from a distance but tells him to stop, because his opponent had already lost his life, and this was the first time the protagonist had sent someone to the afterlife. Then asks how he feels, because it's fun to ask that. Ryu collapses unconscious afterward, and Kang approaches, saying he wasn't some kind of rechargeable battery, but he had done his best, and the Crimson Moon would soon be in chaos, especially if Shin Yong-woo found out about his existence. They would become prey, so he carries Ryu away from there. The next day at the same shop, several cars gather. The executives get out and approach a man. Kim Han-jun, the director of the Gangseo Barracks, surveys the place. He leads his team to investigate everything, until a member draws his attention. Seeing a trail of bodies leading in one direction, Han-jun asks what happened, and who the hell did this to the Crimson Moon, then orders his subordinates to check the other floors. On the 5th floor, he asks if Park Insu is there, and hears a groan in response. Insu calls for the director, who quickly kneels beside him. The manager simply apologizes, while Han-jun asks which organization attacked them. Insu says it wasn't an organization, but just two people. Han-jun wonders how two people could do this and who they are, but the manager says they're ability users. Taekyung had said the other one was a cop, and Han-jun asks where the manager is. One of the members informs the director they found Taekyung. The man is lying on the ground, defeated, with no chance of being alive. Han-jun complains that he was beaten to death, and orders his subordinates to deal with all the bodies in the building. A team member asks if they shouldn't report to the General Assembly first. Han-jun questions why he should report something bad that happened in the area he controls, and if his subordinate doesn't want trouble, he should watch his words, but the member immediately apologizes. Then Han-jun hears a noise from behind. Taekyung is sitting up conscious. The director comments that the bastard Taekyung is alive, and the manager jumps up shouting. At a hospital, the gangster breathes heavily through machines. Hanjun asks Dolpal how this is possible, because he was sure he was dead, but the man had come back to life. The doctor finishes his drink and says the man already knows, then tells him to look to the side if he's curious. Hanjun is surprised to see Taekyung valued at 1 billion glia. He says the gangster is similar to Insu, being an alpha-level ability user, and he can't believe it, because in the end it's all because of his glia, so he asks how a low-level alpha has such abilities. The doctor explains that glia can manifest in different ways and depends on the body. Hanjun says either way, they have to capture the attackers alive and report to the General Assembly before everyone finds out. That way he won't have to take responsibility. Hanjun removes the mask from his face, saying he came back to life once, and he's sure he'll survive, then grabs him by the collar, telling him to wake up and asking if he knows the ones who attacked District H, and that he must tell him. Taekyung whispers the name Ryu Asai-wan, freaking out and saying he's going to kill him, trying to punch Hanjun, but the man dodges easily. The doctor asks how someone who was dead can do that. Taekyung just asks where that bastard Ryu Asai-wan is, telling the cop from District D to come to him, until he takes a stomach blow from Hanjun, who thanks him for the information. After a few minutes, the doctor comments that he had a knack for suppressing people, but it was a rule to send anyone showing ability signs to the General Assembly. They would then be sent to a training center, and some people lose their lives there. Hanjun says first they should strap that bastard to the bed until he recovers, while he goes looking for Ryu Sai-wan. In a rural neighborhood, Ryu is sleeping in bed, having nightmares about when he beat up Taekyung, until he suddenly wakes up startled. Khan comments that he was talking nonsense, and it must be a side effect. Ryu asks why he's there, while the old man complains that he saved his life, yet he still tries to mistreat him. But anyway, he asks Donga to give him a piece of kimchi. Ryu sits next to them right after, asking them to give him some chopsticks too, and Kang says there's not enough food. Ryu gets annoyed that they're eating in his house, but the old man tells him to go cook, because his friend eats too, so there's not enough food. The officer complains that they're being too careless, until Donga draws his attention, asking why he's talking like that to adults. Ryu says they look about his age and wants to know what's with them. Then he stands up, asking why they keep surrounding and dragging him, and wants to know where Kang slept. Donga tells him to calm down before he gets beaten, but the cop provokes him, asking who he is, since both are insane, until a hand approaches him at immense speed. Donga pins Ryu to the ground while warning him not to speak informally, and the protagonist just wonders how he is so strong. The man says he seems resilient and strong, so he's sure he's an ability user, but not good enough to defeat Insu. Kang says they will be the teachers to bring out Ryu's potential, and that means he can fight the Crimson Moon without losing his life. Ryu tells him not to talk crap because his revenge is already over, and he has no reason to fight, since his only enemy was him and not the whole organization. Kang says he's fated to fight the organization until the day he dies, and once challenged, they will never back down. So if he becomes an ability user, he will either become a member of the Crimson Moon or eliminate all threats. Then he asks if he understands the reason for the more serious decision. Ryu increases his strength and tells him to get out right now before he takes both their lives. Kang laughs and says there's no point in showing his strength to someone like Donga. The giant's hand is removed from his neck, but he slams his arm back into Ryu's face. Ready to strike again, Kang tells him to stop that, because he should let it go unless he wants to disobey him. Donga asks if he wants to lose his life, because he shouldn't try to order him around. Kang challenges him, saying he's not someone he can do that to, because he should remember he hasn't paid his last debt yet. Donga says that's true and that it's fun they're in the same boat. Kang tells him to complain to his girlfriend and be ready to get beaten. Then both charge at each other, but suddenly stop when they notice something, then turn and ask if they felt that. Kang complains that he thought he'd have some time to find a place after defeating Taekyung. In the streets on the outskirts, Hanju tells his men not to take the cop's life or hurt him, just bring him in. The men go up the stairs until they notice something at the top, wondering who those two men are and telling them not to interfere. Kang says they look weak, and Donga adds that they wouldn't even spill blood. Then he advances, asking if their parents never taught them how to behave. With just a few blows, he deals with the group of men, until Hanju orders everyone to leave, charging in with a kick that Donga blocks. The giant falls to the ground, and the director asks where the one who attacked District H is, and if those two were there. Kang wonders what this is, because from a distance it looked like a beta level and it shouldn't have the strength to push Donga, while Hanju warns they'll be executed if they challenge the Crimson Moon. The giant tells him to shut up because he'll be the only one executed, then tries to grab him. Hanju narrowly dodges the move, but an elbow strike comes close, making the director move out of range and block a punch. He's pushed down the stairs, and Hanju wonders how this bastard is so strong, while Kang teases his partner. The director tells them not to ignore him because strength isn't everything and they don't have the same skills. They exchange a few equal blows. Kang thinks something is strange because even if he has the power to increase his strength, it wouldn't reach Dongha's level. Then he notices something on his body, saying it's only been 5 days but it's already deteriorating. He shouts to Dongha, and the giant says they're screwed, then tells him to run, so they both take off. Hanju says they're getting away and to chase after them. Outside the house, Kang says he's going to take Kyung-hoon's life, while Ree sighs, walking calmly. Dongha asks about that bastard, but his partner says they should save themselves first, then jumps from the house. Hanju enters and orders the bastards to show up in front of him right away, then turns around asking if they escaped until he notices something in front of him. Ree was standing there, unresponsive. Hanju says that's the Dan cop Ryu Shiwan. Ryu tells him to get out of his house immediately, then tries to punch Hanju, who asks what's wrong with his body, and if he ate something strange while easily dodging the blows, saying he's an interesting bastard because he has some silly moves. Then kicks him in the face, knocking Ryu down. Hanju says he's got one of these bastards and should look for the other two who ran away, then stares at Ryu's body lying on the ground. In a dream, the cop remembers Taekyung with a knife to a policeman's neck, who begs Ryu for help. The policeman wakes up suddenly, chained in a room. Hanjun asks if he slept well and if his body shrinks after sleeping. Then he wants to know who he is, while the cop comments that his face looked different. Ryu doesn't answer and takes a kick to the stomach from Hanjun. He says he needs to confirm something for himself, landing several blows on him. The doctor says he's an interesting guy, because the more he hits him, his body grows to the point of being unrecognizable. Hanjun asks if his case is similar to Taekyung, but the doctor denies it, because he seemed to have an immense recovery speed and thinks he enrages his body using glia. But Taekyung had only revived after losing his life, surprising Ryu. He asks if that man is alive because he definitely had killed him. Taekyung suddenly wakes up calling for him, saying that he will definitely kill Ryu with his own hands. The protagonist grits his teeth and shouts that this time he'll make sure to send him to hell. Dolpal says they both look like two enraged beasts. Hanjun suggests having a fight to the death between them to see who is more beastly. Outside that hospital, the police were supervising, until one of them notices Dongha approaching, who knocks them both out. Kang asks why not blow a trumpet instead of making that noise. They had bad after effects from using the medicine, and it must be a side effect. So in this case, he wouldn't let Kyung-hoon go unscathed this time. The doctor was holding a gun to his head, looking at a photo of his wife and daughter. Then he says he'll be joining them soon. Just before pulling the trigger, he recalls some memories. Kneeling on the ground, he says he would do anything to spare his wife and daughter. Shin Yang-woo just stares at him without reaction while the man cries and begs. But the Crimson Moon leader says he had ordered him to withdraw the patent and he didn't do it. Because of that, they lost hundreds of billions in the pharmaceutical industry. All of it his fault, causing serious damage to the Crimson Moon. They had to make up for this loss, but he would give him one choice. If he wanted to save his wife or his daughter, he had 3 seconds to choose. Kyung-hoon tells him to stop as the countdown ticks until it reaches 3. Yang-woo snaps his fingers, saying it was a waste, then drops a truck on the doctor's wife and daughter. He exhales heavily in his office, being pressed against the desk. Dongha warns that if he dies, they won't get the medicine. Kyung-hoon asks why they're giving him such terrible looks, because he had already told them that if they used too much power, the medicine would lose its effect. Kang complains about that limitation, and Dongha says he made it sound like a great medicine, but it's a fraud. Kyung-hoon asks where Ryu is and why only they are here. Kang says he was captured by the Crimson Moon. The old man tells these lunatics to rescue Ryu, because without him they can't make more medicine or capture Yang-woo. Dongha gets irritated at him, but Kang tells him to stop, because that bastard Kyung-hoon is expecting someone to kill him. Then he orders Dr. Min to give up the rest of the medicine because they're going to bring Ryu back at any cost. Elsewhere, Ryu takes punches to the face from Taekyung's fists. The protagonist insults his opponent and counters with another punch. But Taekyung doesn't even feel pain and smiles, returning a blow to the stomach and saying he's also gained power. They keep fighting relentlessly while Taekyung says he won't lose to this bastard. Hanjun says it's a one-sided fight, and the doctor says it depends on them showing their potential. Then he'll decide who wins. Taekyung attacks while thinking he can see Ryu Saiwan's movements in his vision range. It felt like all the nerve cells in his body had come back to life. With that feeling, he believed he could defeat anyone, so he shouts that Ryu is finished for today. Landing a final blow, Ryu thinks he's different from before, then wonders how this bastard has such power, because even if he gets this strong, there's no way he could be knocked out. A voice in his mind says he thought that was everything, but he's just a piece of trash who will keep failing until he awakens the potential of his glia. being knocked down while Kang's voice says the Crimson Moon will crush him like an insect. Ryu breathes heavily on the ground. Taekyang in front of him says he's won. With a smile on his face, he climbs on top of the protagonist, remembering that he smashed his face last time, but now he'll pay him back in kind. Hanju tells him to stop because he had already won, and that was enough for a good match, until he notices the look of hatred coming from Taekyang, ordering him to look down unless he wants to lose his life. Afraid, Taekyang swallows hard and apologizes for having crossed the line. Hanju says he knows that happens in the middle of a fight, but slaps him, telling him not to cross the line, because with that arrogant look, his head would go flying off his body. Taekyang shouts yes, and says he will be more careful in the future. His boss plays with his hair, warning that he was the only member left from that squad, while Taekyang thinks that once he gets stronger, he will be the one to take Hanju's life. Until a voice from behind asks Director Kim what was so funny. Hanju turns his head, startled, coming face to face with Sangjin, the White Serpent, who asks if they weren't having fun because he was curious about it. Hanju wonders if he found out about what happened in District H. Sangjin asks what his problem is, because he's facing his boss but didn't even greet him. Hanju says it's been a while and asks why he's here. The vice leader says that before that, he wants to know who those are behind the district general director, then tells Director Kim to answer who the man next to him was. Hanju hesitates, saying they're rookie ability users. Sangjin orders both to be taken to the car, surprising the director. Then the vice leader asks why he's surprised, because he knows those rookies should be sent to the island until they survive the tests. Hanju thinks it was a close call, worried in case Taekyang says something, because they would find out about what happened in District 8. The guards escort Ryu and Taekyang out of the room. Sangjin says the reason he came to this place was because of the 4 great villains. Hanju repeats the information and Sangjin explains they were the first to last generation of villains who gave hard times to Yongwoo. He would never forget how much he suffered and was suspecting they had returned to activity. Hanju asks if the boss hadn't dealt with those bastards. Sangjin says he was right, and Kang Min was a prisoner, Donho was in a vegetative state, and the other 2 were crippled. After some time, Kang Min had been executed and lost his life before going to another hospital. Ryu was playing in the car while the officer tells Taekyang to get inside. Sangjin says the only one missing was Bak Shinyan, who was under Hanju's supervision. The man says he doesn't need to worry about her, since he was in control not only of her body but also her soul. So if someone irrelevant interferes, Shinyan would be the first to tell him. Sangjin looks somewhat suspicious, calling Director Kim, asking if he wants to be promoted to assembly executive during the presentation, and Hanju says yes. Sangjin tells him to stop that habit of being a confidant, scaring Director Kim, who apologizes while the vice leader tells him to send a report later on Shinyan's movements, and if there's a problem on her side, he shouldn't even think about being promoted and just give up the job. Hanju clenches his fists, cursing Sangjin's life. On a strange island, there was a small house. Ryu suddenly wakes up inside, standing up startled, wanting to know where he was. Then he remembers he was definitely struck by Taekyang's punch and passed out. Then he leaves the house wondering about this place, until he notices someone coming. He calls out to the man, saying he has something to ask, wanting to know where this place was, but the guy charges at him, landing a kick that Ryu blocks. The protagonist steps back, calling him a crazy bastard, but raises his head as the man comes in with another kick. Blocked again with difficulty, the protagonist asks what's wrong with him, and what was with that sudden kick. The man asks if they brought him here without telling him anything, kicking the protagonist in the abdomen and making him fall backward. That green-haired guy says this place was Misang Island, a survival training area for new Crimson Moon ability users. Ryu just repeats the island's name, a bit confused. He asks how he got here, and the man says he shouldn't be asking him, but he didn't need to know since he was about to lose his life, then tries to kick the protagonist. Ryu is hit and thrown to the ground. The man tries to stomp on his face, but the protagonist dodges. He thinks this guy really wants to take his life, but all of this felt meaningless, and he wonders if they bring people here just to take lives. Then he clenches his fist, takes a fighting stance, and says he needs to defeat that guy to find out what this place really is. The man charges forward laughing, saying this is not a place where a child can survive, then attempts a spinning kick. Ryu asks what kind of crap he's talking about while dodging. He grabs the man's leg, saying his kick doesn't hurt, then slams him to the ground, jumping on top of him with a punch. Ryu lands the hit, then says for bastards like him, it's over once he captures the leg. But in the end, he still didn't manage to learn anything about this place. Walking through a forest, he wonders about Misang Island and if it's the training center, because it's a strange place and he needs to get out of there immediately, until he comes across an old man complaining about his back in the hot weather. Ryu approaches, asking if he lives there, and the old man confirms. The protagonist asks how he can get out of this place. Then the old man says the island is a place where people lose their minds, so he asks if he knows why it's called that. throwing his scythe at the protagonist and saying people here are busy taking each other's lives, and that Ryu will lose his mind soon. The old man drives 2 daggers into his chest, warning that in this place he shouldn't trust anyone, but nothing happens, and he wonders why the brat doesn't die. Ryu asks if he's done, then punches the old man, sending him flying. The old man's face suddenly begins to rejuvenate. Ryu wonders what that is, because an ability user can change their appearance to look like an old man. On a ship far away, some guards watch over a room. Yang-woo asks how many participants are in the survival training, and Sanjin says there are 12 of them. The leader asks if there's anyone who can be used. Then the vice leader confirms, but says he isn't the leader. On a mountain at the top of the island, Taekyung starts climbing, saying the island's name is awful, then sits there, looking back and commenting that he can see what it looks like. A voice suddenly says it's good to see him, and that he's killed everyone here, so he thought only weaklings were left. But it seems there's a bastard like him who survived. Taekyung says the man in his arms was already unconscious, yet he's still carrying him. The man explains he was just beating him to pass the time. Taekyung laughs, saying he's insane and brainless. But the man gets furious hearing that and asks if he wants to go to hell. Back on the ship, Sanjin says he's Park Chan-song, and in the previous test, he beat all the participants and was a maniac repeating the tests several times. Yang-woo asks if that's really true and says it's been a while since he's seen someone useful. A drone films the mountain, and Taekyung says that either way, one of them is going to hell, and Chan-song agrees. But he clenches his fist, remembering that his enemy is the one who'll go to hell, then throws the victim far away. The man steps in front of Taekyung and tries a punch, but it's easily dodged. Taekyung counters the attack, but it's blocked by a hand. They stare at each other for a few seconds, then start a frantic exchange of blows. Taekyung's attacks are blocked, and Chan-song asks if that's all, because he's too weak, then pushes the attack back. Taekyung defends, wondering if he's a rookie, until he gets hit in the face. He's thrown back, thinking that really hurt. Chan-song jumps from the ground toward his opponent, stepping on his face while saying he's his toy now, until he notices something below, with Taekyung blocking the attack. Chan-song asks why he even cares if he's going to die today. The gangster tries to curse him and tells him not to look down on him. A few minutes later, Chan-song has him in a chokehold, saying there's something left, but wants to know if he can feel his life fading away like this. It's amazing. Then tells Taekyung to just give up because he'll never defeat him. Thus knocking the gangster out, Chan-song says it's a shame, because he thought he could play with him a little longer, then wonders where he should go to find his new toy, but he's out of energy. On the ship, Yang-woo asks if Taekyung's defeat has been confirmed. Sanjin says yes, because his heart isn't beating. The leader comments that Chan-song is a true fighting machine, so they have to put him on the front lines, and Sanjin agrees with the boss. Until Yang-woo notices something, smiling because of his unexpected. Chan-song turns for a second, coming face to face with Taekyung holding a rock. He is struck and falls to his knees as the gangster says he wouldn't lose his life so easily. Chan-song thinks he can't move and wants to know what this bastard did to him. Taekyung emanates a green aura from his body while smiling. He kicks Chan-song in the chest and steps on his face, telling him to relax with his opponent already unconscious. Inside the boat, Yang-woo asks if he hadn't been defeated, and Sanjin confirms. The leader says he's back and seems stronger than before, then asks his name, with Sanjin explaining that he was a regular member, but was acting as manager of District D. Taekyung throws Chan-song's body off the cliff. Yang-woo comments that this is interesting, while Taekyung smiles and starts laughing, since their paths had crossed here of all places. It was great to see that bastard named Ryu Shiwan who was climbing the cliff. The protagonist complains that he has no idea how excited he was to see him. Taekyung is slightly unsettled, thinking this bastard gets more disturbing every time he sees him. Ryu plants his footing and says he's already tired of Taekyung and they should finish this. The delinquent grins, saying that's exactly what he wanted, and they both charge forward. Taekyung lands a punch on the protagonist. He reflects that he's tired of all this crap, but is still stronger, headbutting Ryu. He lands a knee to the protagonist, saying an idiot isn't on his level. Ryu tries to block Taekyung's punches, thinking he's faster and stronger than before and that he'll lose if he doesn't counterattack, remembering Kang's teachings about striking first, and if it doesn't work, to keep advancing. The protagonist tries an attack, but Taekyung dodges. Then they both back away, the protagonist panting. Ryu says he has no idea how he came back to life, but this time he'll make sure to send him to hell. Taekyung replies that he should be careful with his words unless he wants the same fate as his friends. The protagonist asks why he did that, since all he needed was to take his life, but he killed innocents like Chief Min and the other officers. Taekyung starts laughing completely uncontrollably, then says he knew there was something wrong with him from the start, since he really came after him just for hurting some pigs, then asks if the Crimson Moon needs a reason to take someone's life. Ryu gets angry and says no one can talk like that. Taekyung rushes in front of the protagonist and tries a punch, calling him a weak idiot, with some kicks to the chin and other attacks that Ryu just takes. But Taekang notices he hasn't even flinched, and then backs away. He feels a strange sensation looking into his eyes, then tries several consecutive punches. With no effect, he thinks about that unsettling feeling when Ryu stares at him. The protagonist punches Taekang, knocking his opponent out, then climbs on top of him, warning that this time he'll make sure he never breathes again. But some lightning runs through his body. Ryu wonders what's happening that he can't move his body. Yang-woo says that's enough and that the kid he defeated was property of the Crimson Moon, so he couldn't take his life. Ryu wonders who the hell this is and if he's from the Crimson Moon, because he's different from anyone he's ever seen. Then wonders what kind of ability this is, while saying he has no idea who he is, but tells all the Crimson Moon bastards to go to hell. Yang-woo clenches his fist, thus forcing the protagonist to kneel with his head on the ground. Ryu wonders why his body feels so heavy because it's too much pressure. Wanting to know who the hell that guy is, Taekang's body starts levitating away. Yang-woo explains that he blocked all his muscles so he shouldn't move much, because forcing himself would only tear his body apart, but Ryu tells him to shut up, since he's going to kill Taekang now. Using the strength of his arms, the protagonist manages to move. Yang-woo is slightly surprised but asks why he doesn't care to listen to his warning. Ryu feels immense pressure on his body as if it's about to break in half. Yang-woo tells him to control himself if he still wants to stay alive, but Ryu tells him to shut up. Managing to stay on his feet, he warns that Taekang is going to hell today. He charges toward the Crimson Moon leader with a grab. Yang-woo is caught, wondering how he can even move. Ryu simply orders him to hand over Taekang right now if he doesn't want to go to hell. Yang-woo thinks he's got guts. Sanjin runs toward his master, but receives the mental order to stay out of it, because he's definitely a rookie using Glia, yet he wonders where that strength is coming from. Therefore, he has unlimited potential. Yang-woo tells him he's powerful and can stop now. Ryu tells him to shut up and give Taekang back, because if he doesn't, he'll send him to hell. And the Crimson Moon leader says he appreciates his bravery, grabbing the protagonist's hands and releasing them easily. He warns that he still has a long way to go. Then he strikes the protagonist's chest with his palm, saying it's time for a break. Ryu is repelled far away and crashes to the ground. Sanjin asks if everything is alright, while Yang-woo stands up and wants to know his name. His secretary says he's called Ryu Shiwan. Yang-woo comments that he's never heard of him before and asks if he belongs to the organization, but Sanjin denies it, because Vice President Hajun Kim brought him and Taekang, saying they were new ability users. Yang-woo tells him to come to the General Assembly as soon as possible, then begins levitating the two of them with his power, saying he wants a detailed report on both of them. Yang notices something behind him and throws them both to the ground. Then he moves his palm toward the cliff, asking who's there. A laugh can be heard as Kang and Donga leap out. Kang Min says it's been a long time since he's seen him, but he's looking well. Both companions comment that everything's going great for him. Yang asks how they're still alive, and also why they look like that, as both charge toward him. Soon he deduces they won't answer, dodging both their strikes with ease. Yang comments that from their movements, they really are Min and Donga, but they're only young on the outside, and with a single attack, he repels them both. The leader runs forward and grabs Min by the collar to throw him, while levitating Ryu and hurling him at him. Both crash to the ground, unconscious. Yang approaches, asking them to explain how they're standing in front of him, because Min should have been executed and Donga should be in a coma. He has a lot of questions for them, like the methods they used and who's behind it. Donga charges at him, saying he'll never tell. Kang Min does the same, and Yang only complains that their attacks are predictable, until he senses something, being grabbed by Ryu. Yang thinks he wasn't expecting that. Both old men rush in, saying they'll finish him now, so the protagonist mustn't let go. Then they prepare their best strikes against him. Yang comments that he was going to take him in because he had potential, but it's a waste, then releases a massive energy blast at Ryu. Dongha and Kang complain as the energy hits them too. They both say he's a monster. Ryu is critically wounded, wondering how he's so strong. Kang questions how far he's pushed himself. Yang comments that he doesn't know how they're alive, but it's disappointing they're so weak. But that's not it. Maybe he's just gotten stronger and they'll never surpass him. Donga gets furious and charges at him, telling him not to underestimate them, until he's met with a knee strike, which he quickly blocks. Sanjin steps back a bit, and Donga asks who this idiot is. The secretary takes off his jacket, saying he'll handle them, walking toward Donga and saying it's nice to meet him, since he'll see if he lives up to his reputation. Donga charges at him with a punch of absurd speed. Sanjin dodges with ease and turns, saying he might be stronger, but he'll never be faster, then strikes him with kicks. Donga complains that he's getting on his nerves and keeps going at him, while Kang watches the fight. Yang asks what made him think he could do this, releasing energy in his hand while saying it's a waste, because they're not going to let those two live. Kang laughs, saying he read his mind, then charges at Yang, telling him to go to hell. The The fight breaks out and Yang dodges the blows, saying Kang is stuck in the past because he's trying to take his life with such weak attacks. Kang thinks he's predicting his movements and dodging all his strikes, and at this rate, he'll never be able to defeat Yang. But the most important goal now is rescuing Shuan, so Kang deflects one of the attacks, thinking he'll be defeated before he can manage it. Donga and Sanjin were fighting on the other side. Yang charges forward once again, telling Kang to keep their fight in mind, aiming a piercing hand strike that hits Kang in the chest. He falls to the ground, stunned, while Yang traps him in his ability. The leader comments that he's not the same as before but fought well. He had many things to say since it had been a long time, but thinks it's unnecessary. Channeling energy into his hand, he says the time is up. But before that, he says it was good to see him once again, until a shout is heard. Ryu charges at the leader of the Crimson Moon, ready to land a punch. Yang wonders how it's possible, taking the blow without being able to react. Kang manages to break free and says he can move again. He calls out to Donga, telling him to stop fooling around and get out of there. Donga punches Sanjin in the face, teasing that he doesn't need to worry about his boyfriend. Then they run to the cliff's edge, deciding to jump across. Sanjin calls for his lord as he stands up and runs to him, then asks if he's okay, and Yang replies yes. Sanjin apologizes, saying he should have done everything to stop him. Yang puts a hand on his face, asking if it was Hanju who brought Ryu to him, because he should speak to him immediately this time. In a large boat warehouse, Yang and Sanjin walk in, greeted by subordinates. The leader nods and looks around. Then he calls Sanjin's attention, saying he doesn't like these formalities. Sanjin apologizes and says everyone in the ancient warehouse wanted to meet him. Yang just allows it and decides to keep walking, but someone calls his name. A man with a knife appears, and Sanjin orders his guards to deal with him. The man trembles in fear, but Yang tells them to stop, then approaches the man and asks what's going on with him. The local says his family was living on the street because of the Crimson Moon, and they had greatly increased the interest rate in a year. He has nothing left to lose and would do anything to take his life with this knife. Yang laughs, saying he had trouble with sales and was sorry about that. The man is confused, saying he misunderstood and that Yang can erase the debt his family has accumulated. But Yang replies that's not what he meant, and says he's sorry for making him come here with a knife in hand, asking if someone forced him to borrow money, because he probably did it knowing the interest would keep growing if he didn't pay, and it was he who forged his relatives' signatures, so they should be honest that he never intended to pay in the first place. He thought the government would write off his debt or plan to take the money and run, but unfortunately for him, they're different and go after every idiot like him to make sure they pay. That way, people will learn to fear the Crimson Moon and their money, so he should sell his family or organs instead of shaming people instead of paying it back. The man grips the knife tighter, crying, saying he didn't do that, and it's all Yang's fault, then charges forward, saying it's all because of those Crimson Moon bastards. Yang uses his power to immobilize the man, gradually filling his body, then closes his hand, making the man explode. Sanjin opens his eyes, now slightly stained with blood, and looks at the knife on the floor. Yang simply orders all his servants to make sure they return this gesture to the man's family. The subordinates sigh as the leader keeps walking. Finally arriving at a car, Sanjin asks if his lord is alright. Yang asks if he knows why the four villains have that name, and the secretary says it's because of their barbaric violence combined with their abilities. The leader says they are brutal and have attacked the Crimson Moon many times without leaving survivors. Sanjin repeats this, and the master says what's frightening is that they don't give up until they've taken down their target. 20 years ago at the former mansion, Kang goes through taking guards' lives along with his 3 other companions, leaving behind a massive trail of bodies. Upon entering a gate, Kang comments that he's finally met the infamous executive. Yang just stares at them in silence, emanating an intimidating energy, then says they killed everyone, and he expected nothing less from opponents who control the underworld. The four mock what he's saying. Sujie asks if he wants a hug. Donga comments that he's mistaken, because them being reasonable with him doesn't mean he's on their level. Yang releases his aura, warning that they'll find out who's wrong during the fight. Donga says his aura is white and red and wonders if he's even stronger, while Kang walks forward, remembering that it doesn't matter, because they can overcome any difference as long as all 4 fight together. Then he charges at him with a punch. Their blows collide, and Kang is thrown back by the overwhelming force. Yang charges forward again, saying it's disappointing, but Donga steps in front, warning that he's just getting started. Then he blocks one of Yang's punches, which makes him spit blood. The Crimson Moon leader asks if that's all he's got, because it's also disappointing, but the giant says he's not done yet. Then he orders Shintu and Hwasa to hurry up. Bake tries a downward kick, which is blocked by Yang. A blade approaches his face, but the leader dodges several times. Thus begins a large-scale battle. The tenacity of the 4 villains is so intense that Yang feels a chill down his spine just from their venomous presence. Eventually, the fight ends with him injured. They all breathe a bit, while Kang comments that he's never fought this insanely before. Dongha agrees and says he's completely drained. Both Jae and Baek are panting from the fight. Kang asks if they should finish it, saying Yang did well while it lasted. The leader only asks, if he dies, which one of them will reign in his place, because before he appeared, the four ruled Seoul in different sectors, but he unified and governed the city. Money flows through Seoul every hour, and a predator never walks without eyeing prey, so he used their greed as his ultimatum. Kang tells Dongha he'll give him Incheon, so he should forget about Seoul, and the giant calls him crazy. The old man tells him not to be greedy, and so they start arguing about it. The discussion grows heated while Jia tries to remind them the fight isn't over. Yang reflects that they probably never thought about this, and using their greed, he'll turn Seoul into one. Kang and Dongha have a balanced fight against each other. Baek tries to say they're out of their minds, and Jia suggests stopping them. But Yang is already behind them and warns that it's too late, because he's been saving his strength for this moment. Baek tries to kick him, calling him full of himself, but it's easily blocked. Yang twists his leg the wrong way, injuring Baek. Jai tries to rush in and stab him with her knife, but Yang dodges. The man grabs her by the neck and says her poison daggers were made to be feared. The girl calls out to Kang and Dongha, who see Baek with his leg broken. Kang asks how he's standing when he was practically lifeless. Dongha comments that Bastard was holding back. Yang smiles, remembering they relaxed, and says he's about to break their friend's neck unless she's saved. Jai begs them to save her. Dongha says they can both go in, but Kang seems reluctant, thinking they're wasting time fighting for others. The giant decides to run, while his companion tries to stop him. Yang comments that at least he still understands the concept of loyalty, but then attacks with a piercing hand to his stomach, saying he'll never walk again. Dongha spits blood as the rain continues to fall in that place. Yang says Kang is the only one left, and that he's heard he and Jia have something, so asks if he's not going to save his girlfriend. Kang gets irritated hearing that but apologizes as he turns to leave. Yang thinks he won this battle by causing them to fight each other, then says the poisonous aura still makes him tremble, and now they've chosen Shawan as the key to their goal, remembering the way he fought on the island and the punch he received, saying it's impossible not to get excited about meeting someone like him out of nowhere. On the other side of the island, Kang sighs as he reaches land. Sitting down, he says he thought he was going to lose his life. Then he asks if Ryu has already left, but Dongha says it's impossible. Kang sighs, complaining that he managed to land a blow on Yang. Dongha says Kyung-hoon was right about him. Then the old man concludes that they really could defeat Yang if they used Ryu the right way. On a road nearby, a man drives with his girlfriend. He begins his trip until he hears a noise ahead. Dongha is standing in the road with his arms open. He stops immediately, while the woman screams that they almost ran someone over. Then the three men get into the car, scaring the couple. Dongha tells him to keep driving and not to worry. Back at the hospital, some guards are supervising. Then they tell Kang to identify himself, but the old man tells them to move aside, because they were there with their father. Inside the office, Kyung-hoon comments that they had rough times on Mujin Island. Kang explains that Yang almost took their lives, leaving the doctor in disbelief and asking how they escaped. The old man says that Bastard hit the leader of the Crimson Moon in the face, and that made it possible. Kyung-hoon starts laughing, saying they realize what he had been telling them, since they need Shawan if they want to defeat Yang. Kang says he doesn't think it's the right time to laugh, because Ryu was about to go to hell, then wonders why it takes so long for him to heal if he's already been hit 1,000,000 times. The doctor says things don't look good for him right now. Dongha tries to tell him to bring a doctor, but Kyung-hoon says those wounds can't be treated like that, but he has his own methods to fix it. In a testing room, Rai rests on a stretcher. Kang asks what this place is. The doctor explains it's a decompression chamber that applies pressurized carbonated water. Dongha asks why they put him there if he's seriously injured, but the doctor says it was made specifically for Ryu. The gas starts releasing, and Ryu suddenly wakes up. He starts choking from the pressure and writhing in agony. Kang asks how this will help him, since he seems to be suffering even more now. Kyung-hoon confirms, since the room has already surpassed level 12 pressure, so Ryu is experiencing the equivalent of descending hundreds of meters into the ocean without equipment. Dongha tells him to stop it now, and Kang asks if he's trying to take his life. The doctor asks why they think Ryu survives and keeps getting stronger even in deadly situations, because to unlock Shawan's full potential, they need to put him in extreme conditions. Ryu strikes the glass, while both villains comment on the greenish aura now. Kyung-hoon says that a normal person like him can't see it, but the glia must have finally emerged after a series of life-threatening encounters. Ryu keeps pounding the glass without stopping. Kang tells him to release him now that he's alive, but the doctor says this is an opportunity they can't waste, because he's going after Ryu Shiwan's limit, since there seems to be much to see considering his potential. Then asks if they see anything different. Kang comments that now Ryu's aura has changed to blue. The doctor says they both know Glia users express different aura colors depending on their level, going from alpha level with green, beta with blue, gamma with purple, omega with red, and delta with white aura. Kyung-hoon says he can't wait to see what color Ryu will be able to show. Kang reflects that if this bastard can surpass Yan, he has no choice but to bet on him. Ryu starts screaming as his aura turns purple. Kyung-hoon comments that he can do better than that by pushing his limits as far as possible. Ryu keeps striking the glass with all his strength, while the doctor yells at him to embrace the pain, then wonders if he should increase the pressure to level 15, but Donga tells him to stop. The old man comments they'd only just begun, then presses the keyboard because he's going to see how far he can go, even if it kills him. The gas keeps pouring into the room more intensely, and Ryu kneels, screaming. His aura begins turning red, and Kang says he's reached Omega level, just like them. Donga says it's better to stop unless they want to send him to his maker. But Kang tells him to wait a second and look at him. Ryu's aura is white this time, and he radiates that energy. The protagonist charges toward the glass as the doctor smiles. That small window shatters, with Ryu climbing through in his berserker state. Kyung-hoon yells that this is exactly what he expected from him, and that he can finally defeat Yan. But the protagonist collapses to the ground, and the doctor comments that this is his limit. Because if his Glia emerges, he wonders if the strength and duration limit would be the same. If he uses his power without taking hits, they have a chance to defeat Yan. So if he tells the two of them to focus their energy on training Shiwan for now. Since they are the four villains who dominated the nation, they must find a way to maintain his Glia without him taking hits. Kang deduces that essentially he needs Ryu to use his energy without suffering damage, but they don't know if it's possible. Kyung-hoon laughs, saying they have no choice. Back at Yeon's mansion, he was trimming his tree in the calm atmosphere of his home. Hajun had his head lowered while his master kept working. Yeon complained that he had accidentally cut a perfect vine. Then he asked Hajun what they should do with the tree, but the man wasn't sure. His leader stared at him, and he tried to say it was nothing more than a small vine and not a big deal. Yeon used his energy, saying that even large trees can fall from small wounds. Then he cut it in half, saying they must cut evil out at the root. Hajun stared at the tree lying on the ground. Then he knelt, begging Yeon to spare him and show mercy. His leader said that was exactly what he wanted to discuss, asking what his mistake was, while Hajun explained that a few days ago, District H had been attacked by a pair of monsters. Yeon asked if that was it and why no one had told him about it. Hajun was a bit hesitant to tell, but the leader ordered him not to hide anything, warning that the next lie would be his last. He knelt, saying he had purposely not informed him because he was worried he wouldn't be promoted if the news got out. Yeon ordered him to keep talking, and Hajun explained that one of the monsters was Ryu Shiwan. He was together with two others who seemed to be part of the four villains. Yeon sighed and called Hajun's name, warning that he was the rotten branch that could bring down the whole tree, while the director asked for forgiveness. Yeon said he should deal with rotten roots like him for the Crimson Moon to flourish. Hajun banged his head on the floor, begging for a chance, as he had dedicated his whole life. The head of the moon sighed and said he was right, and it wouldn't be good to do that since he had come so far. But he should not mistake his words, as he had only said he wouldn't take his life with his own hands, so he had to prove he was still worthy of living. Hajun asked what he meant, until he heard a voice he had heard before. Taekyang said it had been a while since they last saw each other and that he looked worn out, laughing that he was a joke. Yang said he would lose him over the mess he had made if he could manage to take this guy down. Hajun stood up, thanking him for his generosity and for letting him face a weakling. Taekyang stepped forward, saying he had no idea what he was talking about. With a punch easily blocked by Hajun, the gangster said he wasn't weak. Hajun grew irritated and dodged another blow, complaining that he thought that would work. Taekyang tried his next attack, saying all he needed was to knock him down. The director got angry once more, charging in through the linear strike. He kicked Taekyang, shouting that he had taken him off the streets, knocking the consciousness out of that gangster. Hajun shifted the direction of his kicks, hitting again while warning that he shouldn't underestimate him. With a downward kick to Taekyang's neck, he finally fell unconscious and took a knee to the body. Young commented that it really had been very fast and thought betas couldn't beat alphas, but he had hoped for some fun out of it. Sanjin called out to Taekyang, saying he had been beaten by Chanson on the island, but he was nothing more than a talented amateur. On the other hand, Hajun was a top-level Glia user, so this had been an impossible fight from the start. Hajun turned to his master, saying that he had caused trouble for the Crimson Moon, then asked if he could take Taekyang's life. Yan replied that it wasn't his day to go, and that he should do as he wished. Hajun simply thanked his lord, saying that Taekyang wouldn't live past now. He sat on top of the man and ready to punch, saying it would be fun to smash his face. But his fist was caught by the man, who said he had never agreed to that, because this fight had been a great warm-up. Hanju asked what that was. Taekyang said they were too close for him to be able to kick, then grabbed Hanju's neck, saying he was finished. The director began to emit his bluish aura, telling him to shut up. Then he started beating him without pause, saying he could take his life with his fists and he shouldn't think he was special, because he would never be able to defeat him. Yang and Sanjin watched the fight without reacting. The leader asked what his deputy thought, and he replied that Taekyung could get back up many times, but he still thought Hajun was superior in strength and skill. Yang asked if that was all and told him to keep watching the fight. Hajun's bluish aura was slowly turning green. The director thought he was stronger in every way, but wanted to know why he was feeling so weak. Taekyung rises with a blue aura, surprising Hajun. Yang comments that Shounen continuously recovers by releasing enormous amounts of glia, but Taekyung revives himself with life force. This power was similar to glia, but in this case, he absorbs it from his opponent. Hajun shouts that he's going to take his life. Then he charges forward to deliver a kick, saying he will break his body. Taekyung dodges with ease, turning to throw a punch at him. The blow hits Hajun, while the gangster warns that he will take his life tonight. With the former director on his knees, he tries to insult Taekyung, but the redhead says this guy tried to go against the Crimson Moon's order and asks for permission to finish him. Yang tells him to do as he wishes. Taekyung salutes toward Hajun, who screams one last time. With the man's body on the ground, the redhead walks toward Yang. The leader says it's been a while since the Crimson Moon recruited real talent. Then he informs him that from today, he'll be his secretary, surprising Sanjin, because he get promoted that idiot to secretary so quickly. Taekyung says he will dedicate his life to him and to the Crimson Moon. Yang calls for his vice leader, saying that Kang had returned from his sentence and Dongha was no longer in a coma, and that wouldn't have been possible without someone powerful protecting them. So he was starting to think the president had changed his mind, and Sanjin says he would gather his users to assassinate him, just waiting for his master's order. Yang says not to do that yet because they don't know if the government is involved and they should focus on capturing Ryu and the 4 living villains. But if they find the president involved in these activities, he will pay for it, either with his life or with the power to control his nation. In the laboratory room, Ray wakes up thinking he can't move his body, and it's as if he's frozen. And Yang still had that overwhelming power. Then he places his hand on his chest, saying he didn't know this monster. Kang replies that it's Shin Yang-woo, the leader of the Crimson Moon, and he's the guy Ryu had punched in the face, and the Crimson Moon was looking for him all over Korea. He also tells him that Taekyung is alive, and Dongha comments that they now have reasons to fight. Ryu complains that he doesn't want to see their faces, the giant gets angry, and Kang tells him to calm down. The protagonist asks where he is, and Kang questions if he doesn't remember, because apparently he was brought here when he was beaten to a pulp, remembering when the doctors were trying to save him from his mortal wounds. Ryu wonders how he could forget that all this time. Kang says he had been taken to a regular hospital when he woke up and Kyung-hoon did something like that. The protagonist asks what kind of experiments they did on his body, but a voice says it will explain. Kyung-hoon enters the room next, and both villains mock him for bringing up the subject. Ryu remembers him talking about extracting his blood and grabs the doctor by the shirt, asking what he did. The doctor says he'll explain now that he seems to have recovered his memories, because he brought him here when he heard from an immortal policeman, and his research proved he has the potential to surpass Yang's power. Recalling when the doctor analyzed his glia potential, the doctor says that this way he created something using the recovery abilities of his blood. With that, he was able to reverse Dongha and Min's ages, and both are currently 50 years old. Kang asks if it's true that they both became younger. Dongha jokes that he's talking a lot of crap for someone who could be their son. Ryu repeats the question about how he did that. The doctor says it wasn't for free, and they would train him to release his potential and defeat Yang. Ryu questions what he was talking about with that request. Kyung-hoon says he made everything clear and he should have listened from the first time. The protagonist remembers who Yang is and says it's impossible because there's no way to defeat that monster. Kyung comments that they both said he managed to hit him in the face. Ryu says it was pure luck, but the doctor replies that no one in the world could do that with just luck, and that proves he can fight him, and that was the reason for the bet. Ryu orders him to stop talking nonsense because he just stays in his office playing with cells every day. Kang says that's enough because Yang had taken the doctor's daughter and wife's lives by burying them alive in cement. The protagonist is shocked by this, and the old man says he should learn more about his colleagues. Dongha complained that he had to work with this punching bag. Ryu sighed a little, telling them to wait. Meanwhile, the doctor left, telling them to cut the useless talk and get started with what needed to be done. Dongha and Kang stared at the protagonist in an intimidating way. Ryu asked what they were going to start with. In the training center of Kyung-hoon's laboratory, they faced each other. Ryu said he had no reason to fight Yang, and didn't even have the ability to do so, because the only one he wanted to take the life of was Taekyung. Dongha told him to be a bit more respectful to his elders, and Ryu addressed him as Sir. Kang told him to take it easy because he would eventually learn, but the protagonist said it wasn't easy with the way they looked. Dongha replied that he should learn quickly, or he would take his life quickly. Ryu turned his head and told him to try it. Kang said, getting back to the point, that he should remember Yang had taken Taekyang with him on the island. Dongha added that he was probably going to train him to become a key member of the Crimson Moon, and Ryu would be his enemy, so he would crush him like a cockroach before he could even face Taekyang. The protagonist said this whole thing was a mess. Kang commented that now he understood, and that was the reason to fight Yang. Ryu asked what exactly he had to do, and the old man said he should already know, advancing toward the protagonist to throw a punch. Ryu fell to the ground and asked what that was, since he couldn't just attack someone out of nowhere. Kang replied that this was how they would make him stronger. The protagonist got up and tried to punch his teacher in the face. Kang simply dodged, telling him to remember that he was far from his opponent but close to himself. He had to analyze how far his enemy's reach was and finish him quickly. Kang told him to circulate glia through his blood and concentrate it in his fist, then hit his opponent's vital point to rupture their organs. That was the way he fought, and there weren't many people who could take such a hit and survive. He pressed his fist in this time, and a normal person would be dead at that point. Ryu asked if this was training because it didn't seem to be helping, until he noticed a red aura around Kang, who spoke about teaching him how to use glia in combat. Kang asked if he could finally see aura, because it was a good sign that his body could use glia freely. The protagonist sighed, asking what he wanted him to do since he was just a cop and nothing compared to them. Dongha told him to leave it to them, because all he had to do was endure. Then he lifted the protagonist by the shirt and slammed him to the ground. Dongha explained that Kang's glia made his fists sharp like knives, while his own gave him super strength. Ryu got up, complaining that it wasn't fun and he had had enough, running toward the giant with his fist, while Dongha told him to keep his eyes on his opponent. That way he could plan to attack and block their movements. Grabbing the protagonist's face, he continued that he could use his strength on his own to smash them into the ground, and so he did. A few seconds later, he told the protagonist to get up. Ryu said this was abuse and he would die before learning anything. Dongha replied that this just showed how weak he was, since it really meant his life was at risk, and with that, he charged forward. Ryu thought he should keep his opponent at a distance, but still close, then dodged Dongha's blow and prepared to strike. The blow landed on the giant, who froze for a second, changing the attack into a grab. Kang commented that he had learned to keep his opponent far yet close, so they should move to the next level, with Dongha telling them both to go at him at once. Ryu was surprised as the two explained that they had to increase the pace for him to get good results. Kang struck him in the back, and Dongha punched him in the face. Ryu sat on the floor, panting, and said they couldn't team up because it was ridiculous and made them look like villains. Dongha asked what was wrong with that and said that his aura had been white in the chamber, but now it was just purple. Kang replied that his subconscious knew he was in danger, and his level changed accordingly, then told him to learn to keep his composure at full power, as that was the way to defeat Yang. Because when they were young, they hadn't been his enemies even though they were the best. When Yang appeared, he showed a power no one could surpass. So, unable to defeat him, Yang took each one of them down until they were destroyed. But when the four combined their strength and fought together, they left him close to losing his life. Kang adds that he wasn't telling him to fight as a team for nothing, because Yang is much stronger than before, and attacking without being a perfect team was asking to go straight to hell. But once they pressure him, Ryu will land his final punch with every drop of glia he has. If their plan works, he will learn how to control his power. Dongha says that nothing comes from jumping around like a mindless beast, and the Crimson Moon has already started searching, so there's no time. Ryu yells at them to shut up, but the giant's fist is already in his face. He says it won't be easy, but the young man has to trust them. With the protagonist thrown to the ground injured, he wonders what they want from him. Thus, over the next few months, Ryu begins learning the basics of combat, facing the two of them. On a quiet street, people sell their goods, like fish meat. An elderly man with broken legs pushes his cart, until a kick lands nearby, and he looks up. Sanjin asks how Mr. Bake has been doing. Bake recognizes him as Young's secretary, but the man scolds him for addressing him so casually. Since it seems he hasn't learned his lesson, he steps on his hand. The people nearby decide they're going to call the police for mistreating a disabled man, but a member of the Crimson Moon warns them not to go over there unless they want the same fate. Taekyang says he wants to see what happens if they call the police. The residents recognize the Crimson Moon and say they'll leave before they get caught. Sanjin crouches down and asks if Mr. Bake has been contacted by his old colleague. Bake questions what he's talking about, saying they're all dead, because Nin, Dongha, and Jia have been gone for a long time. Sanjin sums it up, saying none of them have tried to contact him. Bake complains that it turned out this way because of their betrayal, and he would never try to talk to them. The secretary sighs a little and introduces Taekyang as someone Yan recruited. He's a newcomer very good at his job, and in other words, it's better not to lie to him. Taekyung says it's an honor to meet Baek and asks if he can shake his hand. Baek extends his hand, but the gangster crushes it as soon as they touch. The old man screams in pain when injured, and Taekyung says he's being dramatic because he thought he was stronger than that. Sangjin says it doesn't seem like Min or Donga have contacted him yet, and Taekyung agrees. The secretary comments that it's impossible to say what they think, but the gangster tells him not to worry, because the old man will be fine there to tell them when contact is made, since he's afraid of them. That way he'll be sure to report like a docile sheep. Sangjin comments that he's starting to understand why the leader promoted him. Taekyung hands a button to the old man, telling him to press it if Min and Donga show up, and if he doesn't, they'll break his neck next time. At nightfall on that same street, a car parks there. Ryu, Kang, and Donga look ahead coldly. The giant comments that it's dangerous considering the Crimson Moon is nearby. Kang replies that there's no choice but to gather everyone, and Donga agrees, saying they need to work with him to find Jaya. The three of them need to fight together for Siwon to have a chance to land the final blow. Losing on Muzang Island was enough, and that's why they're capturing Baek now. Donga says he'll talk to him, and Kang stares at him confused. Ryu has already stepped out of the car and walks toward the old man. He says he'll buy him all the medicine he needs and crouches to see if the man hears him. Baek replies that he has nothing and asks to be left alone. Ryu tells him that Donga and Min are with him now, surprising the old man. He repeats that they're there and reaches for the button. Ryu looks puzzled, but the old man presses it several times, saying he suffered because of those bastards. The protagonist asks what he's doing until a car approaches. Donga warns there's no time and they should take Baek to the car since he alerted the Crimson Moon. Baek asks how that man is alive. While Ryu puts him in the car, Donga shouts that he'll hear him out, but there's no reason to hand him over to the Crimson Moon. Thus, the car begins to leave the area. The old man complains, and Donga tells him to go faster, while Kang replies he hasn't driven a car in 10 years. Another car is parked at the street corner, and then it collides with the protagonist's car. The people on the street shouted to call the police, saying it was an accident. Donga and Ryu climbed out of the overturned car and asked who the hell had done this. Taekyung called out to Ryu, saying he couldn't believe he was still alive. The protagonist called his name, and the gangster mocked him for leaving him behind. Ryu warned that he would take his life with his own hands, but Kang interrupted, because he still hadn't maximized his power to do that. Donga said they were underestimating two old men. Sangjin told him not to worry, as he would make sure he had plenty of fun this time. Then he snapped his fingers, with several gang members stepping out of the van and surrounding the group for combat. Donga said they were animals who didn't give a damn about the law, and Kang added that they should end this before more people arrived. Sangjin commented that both of them seemed distracted, so he would help them focus. Then he ordered his subordinates to advance. Donga complained that it wasn't fair, and Kang called out to Ryu, telling him to take Baek and get out. The protagonist tried to protest, but the old man told him to get lost. They advanced, with both villains managing to take down opponents in just a few blows. Kang said they didn't seem special if that was their best, until he noticed something strange. One of the subordinates landed a blow to his stomach. Donga taunted that this weakness of his could come back if Ryu was around, since he could handle these weaklings. Kang told him to shut up, and the giant kept beating people down, saying it was hilarious. More people arrived and began attacking the two. Kang thought they were betas at best, but they kept dodging critical blows and coming endlessly. So they were like a pack of hungry dogs, because if they fought together, they would be as strong as a gamma. But even if they teamed up that way, they couldn't defeat him and Donga. Kang mentally suggested that they might be buying time to capture Ryu. The protagonist thought these guys just wouldn't stop coming, while Baek complained inside the car. Taekyung approached and said he knew running away wasn't going to happen. Ryu got irritated, and a gangster warned they would settle this once and for all. Sangjin called Taekyung's attention, saying he would handle Ryu, and that he should help the team with Donga and Nin. The gangster tried to protest that Siwon was his, but the secretary said he lost control whenever they fought, and the president would be angry if he lost. Taekyung thought about sending him to hell just like he did with Hanju, but stepped back right after, thinking that one day he would take his life with both hands. Sangjin told Ryu that was enough and that today he was his opponent, but there was no need to rush. They would get to know each other a bit, saying that his hobby was taking people's lives with his fingers. Ryu thought he was trying to scare him or something, and Sangjin asked if they should begin. The secretary moved in quickly, but Ryu stayed alert. That strike went toward the protagonist's face, but he narrowly dodged, noticing it burned his skin. Sangjin said he had always wanted to take Ryu's life for attacking the leader. The protagonist thought there was no way to defeat Young without dealing with an idiot like this first. Then he dodged his knee strike and countered with a punch. Sangjin managed to dodge even while in the air. thinking that he used to fight like a beast, but now he was calculating his movements. Ryu realized that training with Donga and Kang had really helped. The secretary said it was interesting and that he was slowly getting bored, but before losing interest, he had to speed things up, releasing his glia. Ryu stared coldly at the situation. Donga tried to fight multiple people, but Taekyung called his attention. He charged in with a punch, while the old man told him to respect his elders since it wasn't fun having such a filthy mouth. Then he grabbed him by the neck and made him spit blood. Donga told him to get up and not disappoint so quickly. Taekyung steadied himself, thinking his head was out of control but wanting to see if he could absorb his glia. But the fight was interrupted when Sanjin struck Ryu in the chest. The protagonist wondered what the hell that was since he couldn't dodge the blows. Sanjin withdrew his hand, saying his healing ability was extraordinary, but wondered if he could use his powers without his ribs, since his ability was to rearrange other people's tendons, making Ryu suffer. Donga asked why the hell he hadn't run away yet, since he wasn't strong enough to fight. Kang replied that he would deal with these guys and head over there. The giant said he would save him once he was done with Taekyung. Then he lands another blow while telling him not to resist. Donga notices that he's feeling weaker with each strike. Taekyung starts laughing and warns that the old man has fallen into his trap. The villain charges forward, ordering him to shut up, but his attack is blocked. Taekyung replies that he's already felt this before, and now it's his turn. He then strikes the old man's stomach with all his strength. He says these are the silliest hits he's ever thrown and thought the man was supposed to be one of the 4 villains. Donga tries to tell him to shut up, but Taekyung simply ignores him. The delinquent thinks to himself that he's already absorbed enough power, and this fool has a lot of glia in him. Donga wonders if this guy is as strong as Shuwan, since his aura is red. Then he realizes why he's been feeling weaker and charges to attack him. Taekyung counters with a punch to his face, followed by a spinning kick. The old man falls to the ground unconscious, but still takes a knee to the face. Donga gets up, saying it's not over. From behind him, Taekyung says he can't believe he can get up after that, and lies just like his name says, but he locks him in a rear chokehold, telling him to get out of that hold since he's done this to someone back on Misang Island. Donga tells him to let go, and Taekyung taunts him for not having the strength to resist. The old man spits blood, and Kang tells him to get out of that hold, but he thinks he has to hurry to save Shuwan and this idiot. However, he's running out of time, since the slightest opening lets them get hurt. Landing a hit on one of the henchmen, he says he only needs a few strikes. So he keeps fighting dozens of people, knocking them down with a few blows. With the last of the subordinates falling to the ground, he turns toward Ryu's fight. Sanjin says that soon the protagonist will lose consciousness, so today he's going to show the face of the Reaper as punishment for hitting the leader of the organization. The man's finger moves toward his ribs again, and Ryo panics. Sanjin wonders if he feels his tendons tearing, until he notices something strange about the protagonist, who's emanating a reddish aura. Donga thinks that bastard finally did it. Ryu breathes calmly, and then charges at him. Sanjin thinks this isn't good, and he should get out of there, but his fingers are stuck. The protagonist's fist moves at immense speed and hits Sanjin. He falls to the ground and keeps getting struck repeatedly. Ryu continues breathing calmly after knocking out the secretary. Taekyung thinks he defeated Sanjin in a single blow, and it's annoying. But it's not a big deal, because if he defeats this old man and absorbs Ryu's power too, he'll become stronger than Yang with ease, so he's starting to get excited. Donga manages to use his strength to break free, his power slowly returning. He escapes the chokehold and strikes Taekyung's chin. The gangster falls to the ground, and the giant comments that he has a limit to how much he can absorb. Taekyung repeats that, and Donga tells him to think about not being able to absorb the ocean with a cup, and he's sure Yang knows his limits, so the gangster isn't as special as he thinks. Taekyung gets angry and charges with a punch, saying he'll take him down even if it costs his life. But his face is grabbed by Donga, who lifts him with brute force. Then he slams him against the ground, warning that he's the one who will lose his life today. Ryu exhales, trying to control his trance state, but returns to normal. Sanjin thinks he was wrong about them, and his team isn't enough to defeat these monsters, so he wonders why the reinforcements haven't arrived. Kang says the point today was to take Buck back and that things will end here. Then he tells them to leave immediately while he's still allowing it. Sanjin stands up to go while Donga asks why, if they could finish it now. Kang pats his back, telling him to shut up and get in the car, because they've already used too much of the pill's power to last this long, and Shuwan isn't doing well now, so it would be smarter to leave before these idiots discover their weakness. Donga turns toward the car, saying the pills are crap. Then he grabs the car, while Bake complains that they're finally getting him out of there. Donga thinks that bastard grew up in a box of chatterboxes. He turns the car around to the right position and tells everyone to get in. Rhys sighs, panting, and Kang comments they should head back now that he's in a normal state. The protagonist asks about Taekyung, but his master says he doesn't have the strength to take revenge, so they should get in the car because the pills he and Donga are using are running out, and they'll turn old in no time, asking what he would do if reinforcements arrived and eventually he would take revenge. Ryu stayed silent for a few seconds, thinking about his answer. Donga told him to get in already because he was hungry. The protagonist ground his teeth, but got into the car. Then the team quickly left that place. Sanjin watched them leave, thinking about what he should tell the leader. A few people with aura stepped down from the rooftop and headed toward the street. They called for their lord, and Sanjin greeted the inspection team, but he warned they were late and said those idiots should explain themselves right now. A fat man told him not to act like that just because he got hurt, because he was the one who ordered them to wait, and he asked if there was a problem with that. At the same hospital as always, the group of protagonists gathered, but outside, some drones were spying. Sanjin apologized because he didn't know Mujin would come, and the fat man replied that they couldn't cause more trouble with the villains still free. Mujin grabbed the secretary's head, saying he must be wondering why he was here. Then he said he had an interest in the villains and had been watching them at their hideout, suggesting they take a quick look at what he had found. In the yard of Yang's house, he commented that they had let Bake get away, then tossed some food to his cart. Sanjin said that not only Dongha but also Kang were powerful, and Shiwan was a third force. Yang simply said he didn't like it when he answered like that, because he was making excuses instead of ensuring he would fix things. Sanjin dropped to the ground, apologizing for everything he had done. Yang just stared at him, trembling, but said this was the limit of what he could tolerate. But then he turned to Taekyung, asking how he had been defeated again. The gangster said he had tried to steal Dongha's power just like he had with Hanju. Yang noted that this was the limit of how strong he could be, and it was how Dongha had managed to recover his power. This was also a reflection of his limitation, since a small bowl cannot hold a bucket. Taekyung remembered Dongha saying that, but he thought Ryu had managed to get there on his own and had thus defeated Sanjin. He could only achieve that by stealing Dongha's power, but it didn't last long. So he asked if he couldn't get stronger, and Yang told him not to jump to conclusions, because unlike Sanjin, he still had room to expand his power. Glia typically flows through the veins, and if he could unlock all of his veins, he could handle a stronger flow. Taekyung repeated "my veins" and asked how he could do that. Yang said he could help him with it, but there was a small problem, because his veins could burst if they couldn't handle his power. Sanjin asked if he was seriously considering doing that. Taekyung wanted to know if the leader had done it before, and he said 3 or 4 times, but none of them had survived, and the choice was entirely his, testing his fate or staying weak. Taekyung replied that he would rather lose his life than be useless. The leader touched his chest because he knew he would do it. Then he released energy into Taekyung's chest, making him scream. Yang warned that the pain would be immeasurable, but he had to endure it if he didn't want to become an empty shell. A few hours later, in a secret conference room, the leader met with the president of Korea. A security guard thought it was unacceptable for him to show up without warning, even as the leader of the Crimson Moon. Yang thanked the president for coming there, and Sion replied that it was the least he could do, but he wanted to know the purpose of today's visit. Yang said it was time to pick up the pace with the president, since he genuinely felt he should trust the government to work with him. Sion replied that he was right, and that was the purpose. But Yang wanted to know why he had created a secret force and involved Dongha and Kang. The president clenched his fist, thinking he had found his last plan. Then he said it was a misunderstanding, but Yang told him to stop making excuses, because he had come there to give him a warning. Seong swallowed hard as he asked what for. Yang explained that he would transfer his main business to the Crimson Moon Bank. The president guessed it was a request to accept them as a bank, but the Crimson Moon leader mocked him, asking if he needed permission for that. Since it was time for the Crimson Moon to expand its horizons, he planned to take an active role in all of Korea's financial sectors and start global investments. The president thought this meant he wanted to take control of the country's economy. Young confirmed, warning that the entire country would be under his control, and began staring at the president. A security guard points his gun, asking how he dares to threaten the president and saying he can't tolerate it any longer. Sion tries to call for his guard, who unlocks the weapon. Young applauds him for his bravery. The guard warns that this is an operation, and his colleagues approach with their weapons. Young says it was a good attempt, but they should be careful who they're dealing with, unless they want to put innocent lives at risk. Other guards begin levitating and then explode. Their weapons lie bloodied on the ground, and Song thinks there's nothing left there, because he had taken all their lives before even blinking. Sangjin orders the man to lower his weapon because it's disrespectful. The guard thinks he's a demon. Seong simply kneels, saying he will follow all regulations and halt the money transaction. The Crimson Moon leader replies that it seems they've reached an agreement, so he'll be on his way. But before leaving, he warns that he started a wildfire on Mount Jurizan. President Seong wonders if he also found Dr. Min's secret laboratory. Young says there's a risk of the fire spreading, so he'll leave him out of it. Seong thanks him for the courtesy, but thinks he has failed the doctor. Driving through the city streets, Sangjin takes the wheel for the leader. Young asks who's on Mount Jurison right now, and his secretary replies that it's the inspection team and Director Kang. The leader questions if that will be enough, but Sangjin believes he can handle it. Young says he sent Yongju, surprising the secretary, because Chief Kim was above Omega level, and it would be a waste of resources to send her just to deal with the 4 villains. Young asks if he hasn't understood that his goal isn't the 4 villains, but to destroy anyone who challenges the Crimson Moon. Sangjin apologizes for the misunderstanding, but his boss orders him to turn around, because he's going to visit Mount Jurison himself. At Kyung-hoon's hospital deep in the forest, Ryu keeps sleeping while the machine draws his blood. The masters watch him from a distance, and Dongha asks if he's not taking too much. Kyung-hoon warns that they've already lost most of the pills, and if they don't do this, they'll run out quickly. Dongha replies that it's not like they want this, but they have no choice but to fight. The doctor says none of that matters because they'll be here soon, and that's why he needs many pills. Shuwon is their last hope in every way. Dongha stares with some unease. Kang asks if they're not going to leave this place before they're found, because they can't handle everything. The doctor asks where they would even go, since it will take a year to create another laboratory. Besides, there's no place in the country the Crimson Moon wouldn't notice, except this hospital. They'll decide what to do after Baek wakes up. Kang complains about the situation and follows the doctor. In Baek's room, he shouts to be freed because he'll take everyone's life, since they're nothing but scum to him. Dongha asks if they can't take a break while they're trying to heal him. Baek reminds him that Yang broke both his legs, and they can't heal something beyond repair, but he wouldn't be in this situation if it weren't for those two starting a fight. Dongha tells him to shut up and drink the pill. Baek asks what it is, and the doctor says it will heal him. The old man gets angry, saying they've gone insane and that the bones in his legs are shattered this time. Kyung-hoon warns they're out of time, and Dongha orders him to open his mouth, saying they don't want to hear him talk, so he should drink it right away. Baek swallows the pill, and his eyes ignite a red glow with a burning sensation. His body begins to change, and Dongha comments that it's agonizing, remembering the first time he drank the pill. Baek looks younger, so the giant welcomes him. He looks confused and asks what he's talking about, but the doctor hands him a mirror and tells him to see for himself. Baek wonders how something like this can be possible. Dongha explains that it's a pill that heals the body and makes them younger, and that's why they brought him here. Baek wants to know how that's possible, but then remembers Dongha's condition for having taken the pill. Kyung interrupts the conversation, warning about the next step, since it has exceeded expectations. Baek looks at his feet and finds he can move his toes. He's incredulous and starts moving his body. Dongha welcomes his companion, but he replies not to act like friends, because he still hates them both for everything that happened. The giant asked if he didn't know how to show gratitude, since they had brought him here and given him the pills willingly. Baek replied that he had no right to use that word, because he had made him spend years crawling. Dongha swallowed hard, until an alarm began to sound. The doctor commented that they must have already been found. Outside, the police ordered everyone to stop or they would shoot, but the members of the Red Moon kept approaching. A grenade was thrown to the ground, creating a smoke field. The guards cursed at the bomb, but realized they couldn't see anything. Park In-ju asked him if the villains were inside, but the officer turned, pointing his gun. When he tried to fire, he was slashed by the knife of a Red Moon member. The police were attacked even while trying to fire their weapons, while the Red Moon members simply leaped through the smoke bomb, cutting everyone down. With everyone lying defeated on the ground, Mujin approached, saying he expected nothing less from them, but he warned that he would take it from here, so they should wait and let nothing slip by. The team members simply agreed, while the fat man said he was going in. He tried to open the door, putting all his strength into it, breaking it easily. The guards were waiting for him with weapons, telling him not to move. Mujin said that wasn't the way to treat a guest. Then he ordered Kang and Dongha to come outside immediately, but he wanted to know why the police weren't trying to shoot, since he had been expecting it. The two officers did exactly that, but the bullets were stopped by the fat man's body. He said it was fun while deflecting the shots. The police lost their lives from it, and the fat man said it was so easy, but he wanted more fun, because he was eager to meet the 4 great villains. Dongha and Kang ran through the hospital until they saw several bodies lying on the floor. The old man asked what had happened there and who did this. Dongha replied that he'd bet his money on that guy, with Mujin standing before them. Kang asked how he was so big, and his colleague said he looked like an ogre. Mujin looked happy to have finally found them, and assumed the small one was Min, and the pig was Dongha. The giant got angry at being called a pig by a sack of lard. Mujin got irritated and said he was funny. The old man asked who he was, and if he was the one who did this to the guards. Mujin introduced himself as a Crimson Moon director, and said he had always wanted to meet the 4 villains. Kang said he looked like an executive, and that Yang really wanted to capture them. The fat man said he expected nothing less from him, and had heard he was the smartest. Dongha asked what he was talking about, and if he had just called him stupid, but his friend told him not to get worked up, because he needed to take this pig's life and get out of there. The giant said he seemed a little strong and told him to move in. Mujin got ready, warning he would crush him like an insect. Donghua charged for a clash of strength with the fat man. Mujin thought the old man was stronger than he expected, but he was still stronger. Then he crushed his hand with his grip. The old man was pushed to the ground. Mujin said it was disappointing since he had been waiting to meet him, only for the rumors to be false. Donghua thought not only was he weaker now, but the effects of the pill were wearing off. Kang appeared behind him, telling Donghua never to speak about his strength again. The piercing strike hit the fat man, and the old man released his reddish aura. Mujin let out a bit of a scream, making Kang wonder what was wrong with him. But the fat man said it wasn't that easy to pretend. Kang realized that all that fat was like armor, making it impossible to damage his organs. Mujin said his fat was covered with glia, and now it was his turn. The old man noticed he couldn't pull his hand free and was struck in the face by the fat man. Donghua, who was behind him, rushed forward, saying Kang got what he deserved, and that he would burst the fat man like a whale. His blow even hit Mujin, but the glia-wrapped body protected him, and he asked if the man was done. Donghua realized he couldn't hurt this pig no matter how many times he hit him, so he ran up to him and grabbed one of his arms. Mujin laughed, asking if he still wanted to prove he was stronger, but he already knew they were in different weight classes, with the fat man trapping him. When he slammed him to the ground, Donghua was unconscious for a moment, but he got away as the fat man told him not to be a coward, because he was someone who had once forced his leader to almost lose his life a long time ago. But he was starting to feel bad now, because if he didn't want to die like a dog, he had better give it everything he had. Kang warns that those Crimson Moon bastards are stronger than they should be, and Donghua comments that they'd grown weak, until someone calls the fat man and tells him to pick on someone his own age. Mujin turns to Ryu and asks who he's supposed to be, and if he just wants to go to hell, but the protagonist prepares to fight, saying he'll beat him until he turns to pulp. Kang wonders what the hell he's doing there, and Donghua warns that he's lost too much blood, so they tell him to get out of there, because the fat man isn't someone he can handle. Ryu takes a deep breath, ignoring his masters. Donghua comments that something about him feels different this time. Mujin gets irritated and asks what he's doing, because he's not in the best mood, especially since the guys he wanted to meet are weak. So he should get out of his sight unless he wants to be turned into nothingness. Ryu ignores the warning and charges with a destructive punch to the fat man's stomach. Mujin takes damage and notices that Ryu's aura is red. The protagonist says he's been barking too much, and they should just get to the fight. Donghua wants to know how he got the red aura without taking a beating first. Mujin also notices this guy is stronger than Donghua and Kang, and wants to know where he comes from. Ryu can feel the condensed power inside him, so he clenches his fist. Mujin prepares to punch the protagonist, but the young man is seeing the flow of glia, so he dodges the blow and lands a clean hit to the fat man's head. Mujin is struck multiple times, realizing he can't absorb the shock, and his once invincible glia defense is now below someone else's level. He realizes that Ryu is on a higher level than him and loses every time his ability fails, but he still feels he won't lose now. Donghua thinks the fat man is stronger than him, and he can't even land a hit, but Ryu has surpassed them. Kang says this glia ability can overpower them, but he still needs to surpass Omega level, and there's a vast gap in combat proficiency. That doesn't matter when dealing with glia. Ryu pours more energy into his fist, thinking that no matter how strong he is, having a lot of glia creates a chasm that can't be crossed. Then he grabs the fat man's arm and slams him into the ground effortlessly. Mujin takes a deep breath as Ryu raises his fist, only to smash it into the fat man's face repeatedly. Ryu stares at the body while his masters rush toward him. Donghua wonders how he used his aura without taking a beating and while injured, since it even flashed white for a second. Kang says he's just lucky because his body doesn't have the strength to withstand blows. He still needs time to recover, which means his power output changes every time he uses it. Donghua sums that up as a lack of strength, and Kang confirms, but he wants to know how he feels now. Ryu says it's a calmness and immense power inside him, but he has no idea how to reach it. Kang responds that this isn't his full power, and the protagonist says he felt that. His teacher explains that his extraordinary level is reduced when he loses too much blood, so it's greater than the white aura he showed. Ryu says that if he controls his power, he's technically weaker. Kang comments that he can feel another level, and that way he'd be able to take Young's life someday. But he shouldn't forget this feeling, because now he can use it without taking a beating. Donghua comments that the fat man was too much for them to handle, so even though he has Omega level, there's still a difference in strength, and they should admit they're not that strong. Ryu says he can't do this every time he fights. His teacher asks if he thought he'd learn glia in just a few days, and says it will take time to learn, since he knows Taekang recently gained power. Kang warns they should leave with the doctor and Bug before it's too late. Heading to the infirmary, they look for Bake but can't find him. Kang says he probably escaped while they were fighting and that they should get to the doctor quickly. In a room with red lights, they call for Professor Min. Kyung-hoon says he's ready, but Kang warns they need to leave before they catch up to them. The professor tells him to stop talking and presses a button on the keyboard to open a cabinet. He says these are a set of pills he made with Ryu's blood, and they must take Young's life before they run out. Dongha and Kang are shocked, while the doctor says that if they lose, everything will be over. Ryu asks if he's not coming, and the doctor says he'd be caught if he tried to run, so he's already tired of living. The protagonist tried to say they should just go, but the doctor warned that Shiwon had to survive, because if he did, it would mean he had taken Yang Shin's life. Then the doctor looked at the photo of his daughter and wife in his office. Outside the hospital, there was a group of Crimson Moon members. Kang moved stealthily with his friends. Donna commented that this was the only path they could take. Kang said it was a stupid idea because they were weakened after the fight with Mujin. Besides, Ryu was unstable, and even if he recovered quickly, it hadn't been long since he had donated blood. Ryu said they didn't even know the enemy's strength and should hurry to the car. Kang turned, saying he would go around the other side of the mountain. The group followed the path while arguing uselessly, and Ryu tried to calm them down. But in time, they reached an empty city. The three were out of breath, and Donga commented that humans shouldn't take this path. Because it was a miracle they were still alive, as the reinforcements would have killed them before they arrived. Kang kept walking, warning they had no time to waste. Ryu joked that he seemed younger after drinking his blood, and Donga called Kang selfish. But they kept walking through the city calmly. The giant wondered why it was so bright there, and Ryu answered it was a film studio. Kang told his student to look for something to drink while he and Donga checked the area. Ryu complained about being sent away, while his master complained about his attitude. They kept arguing while someone watched from afar. The girl said they were cute and she couldn't wait to send them all to hell, that it would be a lot of fun. Then she vanished from there and appeared at the corner. She greeted the two, and Donga commented that he had found someone. The girl introduced herself as Executive Kim of the Crimson Moon. Both masters were impressed that a child worked for Yang. Kim got annoyed at being called a child. Kang sensed a strange energy and warned Donga to be careful because she was stronger than Mujin. The giant said she was just a kid, while Kim appeared in front of him. Both were impressed by her frightening speed. Kim thanked Donga for making things easier, then rushed forward again. She used Donga's knees as a springboard to leap and kick him in the face. The old man was about to fall backward, but the girl struck his shoulder again. Donga dropped to one knee, complaining about the pain in his shoulder. Kang gathered his glia in his body, thinking this wasn't good, and he had to hit her with that strike. But the girl vanished before he could even get close. Kang looked back, only to be kneed in the face. He wondered how she could be so strong, and if he was going to die there, hoping the protagonist would take his time arriving. Kim only said it wasn't fun, but Ryu's voice came closer, asking who she was. The girl turned slightly, a bit wary. In Kyung-hoon's laboratory, he thought about making more pills. They had come earlier than expected, and then he clenched his fist. Young asked how he had been, surprising the old man with his presence. The Crimson Moon leader looked down. Kyung shouted that it was good for him to show up in his final moments, and that he had thought there were only insects here. Young called him Dr. Min, asking if he was the one behind all of this, because he had convinced the president to create the lab, had Kang freed from his sentence, and had worked with Donga to wake from his coma and make him young again, on top of discovering Ryu Shiwon's potential, all in the name of revenge for his daughter and wife. The doctor pulled a gun and told him to shut his mouth so he wouldn't curse his family. Young only stared coldly at him, and the doctor shouted that he was bold, because he was a piece of shit and had no intention of leaving without a fight. Young used his ability, asking if this would fulfill his wishes, seizing the doctor's hand. Min realized his hand was moving to fire the gun. The cult leader asked why he was retreating instead of trying to take his life. Kyung tried to move, but Yang told him to just shoot already to provoke him. He thought that this monster could control other people's bodies and that it was a Delta-level ability, but he wondered how far Yang's power had gone to do this. The leader said Glia was a great power that created an abyss between users and those without it, but it worked differently in each person, and even the aura's color depended on one's strength, which was why battles ended quickly. Except this didn't apply to weak humans like him. Yang is surprised when the doctor points a gun at him, warning that he won't go to hell by his hands. The leader warns that he's not done yet, then uses his power once more. He paralyzes the doctor and takes the gun from his hand. Then he tells him he won't be going to hell until he allows it, because he still has many questions. Ryu takes blows to the face, and Kim asks how he feels being kicked like that. The protagonist wonders who this girl is, as she's so fast it feels like teleportation. Kang appears behind Kim, ready to land the final blow. The girl says she's tired of this and tells him to stop attacking from behind. Then she leaps high and kicks Kang in the head. Ryu thinks she looks far too small to withstand a hit like that, so he tries to punch her and the girl counters with one of her own. The protagonist grabs her arm, surprising Kim. Ryo prepares for his next strike, but the girl manages to dodge even while being held. She steps back, saying she didn't expect them to read her moves, and releases her white aura. Kang thinks he had no idea there was anyone else like this besides Yang, but he still must be stronger. Dongha locks her in a chokehold while telling Kang to get Ryo out of there, because they can't all go to hell together. They refuse, and the giant says they can't sacrifice the plant. The girl jokes that he's having trouble using his arm with his broken shoulder, but it doesn't matter because he's going to hell either way. Donna tells him to leave now, and Ryu looks hesitant. Kang warns they shouldn't let the sacrifice be in vain, as there's no other choice. The girl manages to break free from Donga's arms, and he tells that ungrateful brat to get out of there. He's struck multiple times as Kim says it's a waste, since she'll find the others anyway. But Donga grabs her leg, saying he won't let her go. The girl simply kicks him in the head once again, telling him he'll die a painful death for getting in the way of her work, but she'll make sure his friends meet him in hell soon enough. She leaves the place while the old man urges Ryu to run far away. Baek appears at his side and closes the fallen man's eyes. Then he looks to the sky and says goodbye to his friend. Back at the laboratory, Yang stares at the paralyzed doctor. Then he asks how he made Kang Nin and Dong return to their prime, because he should have left them as they were. He continues, saying that glia flows through his blood, manifesting powers, and he's not surprised to find blood that heals. But this ability is so strong that it even reverses the process of aging, awakening Dongha and making Kang younger. So all this is quite possible, remembering when Ray hit him in the face. Yang asks if he's far off from the real theory. The doctor remains silent, and the leader says it'll be hard to get an answer. Kyung calls him a piece of trash, saying he'll never make him talk. Yan agrees but says pain is an effective way to make someone speak. Then he points his finger at his forehead, saying it's a new experience for a scientist. He strikes his brain while still smiling. The doctor notices he can't think straight. Yang explains that humans lose the ability to lie when hit in this spot, and that he shouldn't be ashamed to answer now. So he'll ask again if he's the one who made the remedy that made the villains younger. The doctor replies that he did, and Yang wants to know if Ryu is the source. Kyung tries to resist the pain, but the leader drives the strike deeper, saying it'll hurt more. So he should answer immediately, but the doctor resists. Yang realizes he's shutting down his mind and has no idea what will happen next. But the doctor begins to bleed from his mouth. The leader notices he bit his own tongue and is desperate because of it. Then he says he has no choice but to make him feel worse by reminding him his family died before him. So he'll see how far he can push him. The doctor finds himself in an empty space, but deep down can see a light. He calls to his beloved wife and Haijin, shocked to see them both. Then he starts crying as they smile at him. Yang looks at the doctor's body on the ground. Seeing the smile on his face, he thinks he found peace before passing, but was still a worthy opponent. Back at his mansion, there are hundreds of cars out front. Yang stands before everyone and announces he has orders for the entire company to halt operations, putting all their efforts into finding Ryu Shawan alive. The army confirmed their master's order. Back in Yang's garden, Taekang stood up. This time, his body was altered, with veins bulging outward. Yang called for Sangjin, who answered his master. The leader's order was to use all their power to find Ryu, even if it meant crossing the country. Even if they had to search every airport and ship, they must find him. Sangjin wondered who Ryu really was for his leader to stop everything just to find him. Yang noticed Taekang's body standing there and said he had already forgotten about him. Sangjin asked if he was dead, but the leader said he wasn't that type, touching his back and releasing his power, making Taekang scream. The man slowly regained consciousness, and Sangjin was surprised. That delinquent remained panting while the leader smiled at him. Sangjin wondered how this was possible, since everyone who had received power before had died. Yang asked if he felt his limits had been removed. Taekang replied he couldn't say, but his master told him to test his limits. Sangjin said he would be happy to test them. Yang told him to wait because he wasn't strong enough to do it. The secretary was surprised, and the leader told Taekang to try stealing his glia. Then asked if he was afraid. The gangster remembered everything that had happened but replied no. So he took Yang's hand and began releasing energy. Taekang's mouth blowed while the leader warned him to give it his all if he didn't want to die. Then the young man's aura began turning red. Sangjin thought that bastard was already managing it, while Yang complained it was boring, releasing far more power this time and knocking Taekang to the ground. The young man seemed to look down, and Sangjin noticed his aura had vanished. Taekang suddenly began laughing, sighing a little. Sangjin wondered what was wrong with him, but the gangster stood back up with a white aura, managing to face Yang. The leader was slightly surprised, while Taekang said he would lead the Crimson Moon now. Far from there, Kang and Ryu managed to escape, breathing heavily. The old man remembered the doctor calling him in the lab. and telling him that if the lab was destroyed, he should go to this address. Kang asked if it was a shelter, and the doctor said it was something like that. With a technological city ahead of them, the men heard noises from behind. Following that path, Kang told Ryu to hurry, but he noticed his wounds weren't healing, just like when fighting Yang. So maybe he regenerated slower when attacked by a delta level. Kang noticed the noise coming from a tree, telling the girl to stop acting like a rat and come out. Kim said she was impressed because he didn't act like an idiot like Dongha. Kang asked what had happened to him. The girl pointed to her neck, saying he had died like an idiot, which irritated Kang. Kim said she thought the 4 villains fought among themselves, so she had done him a favor. Kang rushed in, telling her to shut up, using all the strength in his fist. But the girl managed to strike at the same time, kicking his leg. He thought she had broken his glia with a single kick. Kim moved in, saying she really wanted to let him hit her, but he was so slow it was impossible, until she noticed something coming from behind, with Baek appearing at her back. The man kicked her several times, and the girl asked who he was while dodging. Baek mocked her, asking who she thought he was. The girl blocked one of the kicks, saying that speed was Shintu's. Then she said he was as fast as she had heard, but still slower than her. Baek said he wasn't the only one after her as she dodged his kick. Ryu rushed in, telling her to bring Dongha back, and managed to land his fist on her face. The girl went flying far away until crashing into some bushes. The protagonist said he would take her life as he kept walking. Baek warned that she had turned her head at the last moment to absorb the impact, so she would recover soon, saying they needed to make her pay because Yang had killed Dr. Min, and that was his way of saying it. The protagonist repeated Yang's name until he lost consciousness. Kang thought that he had managed a white aura without losing himself. Dongha had believed in his potential enough to give his life. Elsewhere, Taekyang kept laughing. Sangjin cursed him, but Yang told his secretary to stop. He says he found it cute, while Taekyang yells that he no longer has any power and that he's going to drain every last drop of strength from him. Yang repeats, wanting to know if that's really what he thinks. Taekyang comments that his body feels heavier for some reason. The energy begins to take over him, and he notices that Yang is different. It's as if he were a black hole with infinite energy swirling inside him. Taekyang screams in pain and steps back from his master. He kneels and begs for forgiveness for being a fool who thought he was more powerful. Yang stares at him while Sangjin says he will carry out his master's orders. But the leader says it's fine because they need more people like him to make the clan the most powerful in the country. Taekyang realizes this man is no longer human, so he bows his head, saying that from this day on, he will dedicate his soul and body forever to his lord. Yang repeats that he and Ryu Shiwan are enemies, and the gangster agrees that only one of them can remain alive. The leader's order is to find him together with Sangjin and make sure to bring the boy back alive. Then he asks if Taekyang didn't understand the first time. The young man accepts his master's order and steps away. Yang comments that one has the ability to heal and recover, while the other steals power, so this will be the fight of the century between the two of them. Sangjin thinks he's still not sure about this bastard, and Yang says he'll inform the strategy officer. The secretary asks why, but his leader says that Shiwan can reverse age with his cells. That means he could have eternal life as long as they have him. With that, a Crimson Moon wouldn't just take the country, but the entire world. In a luxurious house in the city, the protagonists gather. Kang says they have to save the pills for when they really need them, but he doesn't like being old like this. He takes the bag from Baek's hand, asking what he was going to do. His companion says they need to take them if they want to be young again. Kang complains that these are the last pills and that they'll only use them to fight the Crimson Moon bastards. Then he asks how Ryu feels, and the protagonist says he's fine, but wants to know what this place is. Kang explains it's a house prepared by the doctor in case the lab was found. Ryu looks down, and the old man recalls that Dongha and the doctor had bad attitudes, but were good people. Baek takes the pills from his hand, swallowing one right away. His body begins to change until he's young again, and he tells Ryu to get out of the house. The protagonist asks where he's supposed to go, and Baek explains that Dongha asked him to take care of him, so he's going to train the boy. Outside, Baek comments that he's a user and tries to talk about Dongha. Ryu only asks how he died. Shinto reflects that he's in mourning, holding on to his humanity in a moment like this. He says Dongha wanted to protect his student until the end, but Kim smashed his head like an insect. He died brutally, so the protagonist must do everything he can if he wants to avenge his master. Ryu emits a white aura upon hearing this, and Baek is surprised at his potential, which exceeds expectations. But he says he'll teach him how to use glia in his feet. Then he points to a tree, asking if the boy thinks he can jump onto it. Ryu complains that it's much taller than him. Baek channels energy into his body, focusing it in his feet. Then he jumps to the top of the tree. Ryu wonders how that's even possible as his master comes down from the tree. He turns to Ryu and says it's his turn. The protagonist is surprised by the order, but Bake explains that the feet are for both defense and attack, because you can jump to save your life and he must focus his glia into his feet. Ryu thinks the tree is at least 30 meters tall, but he emits his white energy, focusing it in his feet. He jumps to an impressive height. Bake wonders if he'll manage it on the first try. The protagonist hits his head on the tree, then he starts falling to the ground very quickly. Bake thinks it's obvious he wouldn't make it, but approaches his student, explaining that it's not just about focusing his strength, but making sure all his muscles are aligned. Then he turns and says he can't go back home until he manages to jump the tree. The protagonist gets up, asking him to be more specific with his instructions. Bake tells him he has to figure it out himself. It's the only way to learn. Then he goes back inside the house while the protagonist stares at the tree. Back at Young's mansion, Sangjin calls for his lord, who notices the presence of Chief Kim. The girl announces that she was able to take Dongha's life. Young asks what Shiwon looks like, and the girl mentions his white aura. The leader is impressed and wants to know how he compares to himself. Kim replies that she isn't sure, but Yang orders her to find Ryu without taking his life. At the protagonist's house, Kang watches the training through the window and Bake asks why. The old man turns, wanting to know how an idiot who can't even control his power would jump onto the tree. Bake says he's attached to Shiwon, but should give the boy some time. Kang sits down, telling him to make some instant noodles in the meantime. Bake complains that he should make them himself, and his friend yells about him being younger. But the old man notices that Shinto has accepted Shiwon as his student. Later that same day, Kang comments that the noodles were better, and Bake complains that he ate them all. Both notice something in front of them. Ryu was exhausted from all that training. Kang says that was impossible to pull off, but Bake tells him to wait. The protagonist takes another breath and grits his teeth. He then puts all his energy into his legs to leap. His jump clears the tree, and he lands on the ground right after. Bake comments that he thought it would take him a few months. Ryu overhears the conversation and asks what would take months. Kang answers that it was nothing and says it was too easy for him. Bake reflects that maybe it was because of Dongha, but guilt had pushed Ryu past his limits, so he tells him that he not only learned how to use his foot, but how to circulate glia through every part of his body, so they would test it now. The student and his two masters start fighting fiercely for the rest of the afternoon. At night, a car stops in front of the house. Kim and a tall man step out. The girl says this must be the house, and her secretary confirms. They had searched everything within a 10-mile radius based on the location of the last fight. This house had been empty for years, but the electricity was recently activated, which was suspicious. Kim walks ahead, saying she'll take a look. Her secretary warns they should wait for Sangjin, who was on his way with the inspection team. The girl questions if he's above her, but her servant replies that she holds a higher position. Kim complains that it's boring and heads to the house. She enters quietly, walking around and wondering where Ryu might sleep, until she senses a presence behind her, realizing the boy wasn't asleep. Ryu says he woke up when he heard there was a rat around. The girl quickly turns and tries to kick him, but the protagonist dodges, using the wall to deliver a flying kick. Again, with no success, the girl thinks he had gotten faster. Ryu tries a punch, but Kim manages to dodge. She counters with a punch that is blocked. Then they both step back, and Ryu channels his energy into his feet. Kim says he'll never be able to catch her, but the protagonist says she's not the fastest, landing a punch to her face and sending her flying away. Ryu charges forward again, demanding she bring Dongha back. The girl looks hesitant but is hit full force in the face. The blow sends her flying far from the house. Ryu looks around for Kim. Smoke starts filling the area. The girl stands in the corner, and the protagonist spots her. Kim just dusts herself off, saying no one had landed a hit on her in years and Ryu had become more dangerous. So she would crush him before he got even more dangerous, just like she did with Dongha. The protagonist gets irritated and says she will never again be able to speak his name. Kim warns him not to get overconfident, because the leader ordered her to bring him in alive at all costs, but she would end it here. Ryu manages to strike the girl several times while in midair. The masters step out of the house, wondering what the noise is about. Khan comments that Kim had found their house too and tries to go to Ryu, but Bake tells him to wait, as this is the chance to test his abilities. Kim asks how the boy became so strong in this short time and says she doesn't want to push herself like this. Releasing her whitish aura, she moves so fast she leaves a trail. The girl appears behind him and lands multiple punches at once. All of them hit Ryu hard. Kang wonders if she creates clones of herself, but Bake denies it, saying it's pure speed. The protagonist keeps getting hit, and Kim asks why he doesn't try as well. She strikes him in the face once again. Kang warns that he can't keep watching anymore, and that Ryu will go to hell at this rate, but Bake asks for a few more minutes. Ryu keeps his high guard, but with heightened focus. This way, he manages to match her speed and land a punch. The girl barely dodges, thinking he's faster. She then steps back, ready to retreat far from there. She heads outside the house, but Ryu was already behind her and says that indeed, at that moment he was fast. The protagonist slams Kim's head onto the ground. Kang is surprised that he defeated a Delta level. Kim tries to crawl away, but the protagonist prepares to hit her again, ordering her to bring Donga back. The girl begs not to lose her life but keeps taking blows. Every time the protagonist hits her, he repeats for her to bring his master back. Baek and Kang watch this until a car stops in front of the house. Tae-kyung steps out along with the inspection team. Sangjin calls out to Chief Kim, whose face was deformed. Tae-kyung asks if Siwon is hiding in fear. The protagonist turns to face him, but Sangjin tells his colleague not to act that way because if he defeated Kim, he's a tough opponent. Besides, he had Kang and Shintu by his side. Tae-kyung questions why he doesn't back down if he's scared, because he has unfinished business with him. Sangjin thinks he doesn't know how strong Tae-kyung or Siwon really are, so he should take precautions. He orders the inspection team to cover his master's back, and they do so. Kang tells them to act like men and fight for themselves. Tae-kyung mocks Ryu with his strength, and the protagonist calls him out as well. Both engage in a fierce and evenly matched exchange of blows. Tae-kyung wonders how he became so fast, but he charges again, saying he will never be stronger. Ryu radiates his white aura, surprising Tae-kyung. He wonders how trash like the protagonist could have that aura. Kang tries to hit Sangjin, but the man dodges. Then he asks if it isn't time for him to retire, but the old man lands a blow to his stomach, asking if he's going to damage his tendons too. Bak strikes down the lower-ranking executives of the inspection team. Ryu mutters that he told him to leave them alive. Tae-kyung wonders what that meant, but the protagonist remembers when he took the officer's life. The protagonist lands an uppercut to his chin, following with a straight punch that forces Tae-kyung to step back. He punches Ryu in the stomach, asking what he wants now. The protagonist counters with a knee to his neck. He keeps striking Tae-kyung, warning that he will take both his and Young's life. The gangster falls to the ground, wondering why a nobody like him had a white aura. Then he grabs the protagonist with all his strength, forcing him to the ground while locking his neck. Tae-kyung warns that now it's his turn. The protagonist groans in pain and the gangster laughs. Kang orders his disciple to attack, but Sangjin uses the opportunity to strike him, telling the man to keep his focus on his own fight. Baek says that if they lose their lives, they'll lose Siwon as well. Kang lands a blow to Sangjin's back, saying he doesn't care about that. The secretary is taken down with that. Tae-kyung shouts that the fight is over and Ryu was already lifeless. But he notices something different in the protagonist, wondering what it was. There was an entire cosmos inside his body, and Tae-kyung says he stole all his power. Then he tries to kick him, telling him to go to hell. Ryu is struck several times in a row, but he warns that it's Tae-kyung who will lose his life. The gangster feels fear for a second, but tells him to shut up since their strength is equal. Ryu says he will use the strength of his masters to win. Tae-kyung wonders what that is, but he's struck in the stomach by the protagonist. Ryu tells him that this was the blow he learned from Dokul. Tae-kyung can't react, so the protagonist jumps, mentioning the kick he learned from Shintu. Then he grabs the gangster for his final move and slams him to the ground. The protagonist says this was the attack he learned from Gwanma. Tae-kyung is unconscious, and Sangjin comments that he's been defeated. Kang says there's no more hope in the fight to keep this going. Baek had also finished off all the executives in the fight. Standing over Tae-kyung, the protagonist reminds him that he will take Young's life too, and when he goes to hell, he won't be able to find his boss, landing the final strike to end Tae-kyung's story. Sangjin thinks the leader was right and Ryu is the greatest threat to the Crimson Moon. The protagonist collapses to the ground, defeated, and Kang tells him to rest because they'll get him out of there. However, several knives approach them. Kang recognizes who the wielder is. Jaya comments that it's been a while, now facing her former companions. Dokul seems in disbelief, and Bak replies that she had been missing since that day. The woman says that both of them look younger, just like back then. She then orders her subordinates to capture her old companions. They obey, and Bak remarks that it will be difficult since there are many ability users. Luon responds that she captured them herself as a sign of respect. But Kang wants to know why she joined the Crimson Moon and whether she intends to take advantage of him. The girl is surprised but then bursts into hysterical laughter. She says that the man who left her behind to save himself should shut his mouth. The knife attack closes in, and Kang thinks she is faster than before. Jaya's aura was white, and he wants to know what happened. She points her knives at the man. Kang shouts that this is the only choice he regrets, but now they could take their revenge. Jaya complains that revenge is a useless excuse. Baek whispers to his companion that he will distract Hwasa, and he should grab Siwon and escape, but Kang replies that he doesn't even have the strength for that. Shinto notes that it's already too late for all of them to survive, and that just defending would be hard enough. Jaya tells them not to worry about Ryu, as she will take him alive since he will be the subject of experiments. The knives approach the two, and Kang manages to repel them with his fists. Baek dodges them using his speed, but the knife changes direction. It grazes his thigh, and Kang calls out to his comrade. Baek responds that they will lose their lives if they stay and that they need to hurry. The old man thinks for a moment and grips the pouch of pills, saying that he would rather lose his life than run away. He decides to end this himself. He charges at the woman while telling Baek to flee with the protagonist. Jaya dodges the attack and says she will give him the honor of losing his life to her knives. Baek picks Ryu up in his arms and tries to wake him. Young's secretary orders his men not to stand around and to recover Shuwan. The men start surrounding the two, and Baek urges the protagonist to wake up and run. He then begins fighting them as Sanjin advances. He uses his power on Shintu's cut thigh. The man's leg gives out and he kneels. Ryu wakes up, wondering what is going on. Looking to one side, Baek was kneeling, and on the other, Kang was being wounded. He grows furious, saying he's tired of standing by while his masters lose their lives. His white aura begins to spiral out of control, and Kang shouts for his student to stay with them. But the protagonist was entering his rage mode. Baek calls for his student, but the protagonist charges at the executives. He begins striking everyone uncontrollably like a war tank. Jaya stares silently, thinking that he defeated Kim and Taekyung, yet still has strength left. Kang thinks his student will lose his life if he continues like this, and the woman questions since when he started to care. The old man turns, and Jia asks him the same question. Pulling the knives from his body, she tries to throw them again, but Ryu steps in front of his master to protect him. The woman is surprised, and Kang asks what he thinks he's doing. Jaya makes a strange expression and withdraws the knives. Bak remarks that both he and Min have lost too much blood and that they will lose Shuwan. Sanjin orders all his men to attack at once. The old man glances nervously back, but Jaya's knives stop in front of the executives. She says she will take Dokel's life herself. Sanjin seems uneasy, and she throws the knives, cutting down the entire army. The secretary thinks she cut them all in a second and didn't even see the knives move. The woman warns that unless he wants to go to hell, he should take the wounded and get out. Sanjin agrees, saying he will wait for the next order, then leaves by car. Jaya looks back and then approaches Kang. She retreats her knives, and Baek wonders if it will end now. The old man asks why she is on Yang's side. Jaya repeats the question, and Kang wants to know what happened that night. The woman recalls the day he ran away and left her alone. She then asks if he knows what went through her mind since then. It was that she had to take his life, and all she ever thought about was that. Wanting to know how he dares to act to protect someone now. The woman's knives are thrown at Kang. Baek calls out to his friend, and the old man closes his eyes, thinking that if this would help calm her down, it's fine. The knives stop midair, surprising everyone. Kang opens his eyes, but Jae turns and tells him to get out of her sight. The old man wants to know what this means. The woman says he can leave since he has changed, and she won't dirty her hands when Yang is going to take his life anyway. But Ryu will probably end up as a lab rat for the rest of his life. Kang tries to call out to her, but the woman warns that if she sees him again, she'll send him straight to hell. The old man collapses to the ground, defeated as well. In the car, Sanjin thinks he doesn't understand, no matter how much he tries, why she ordered them to fall back. But that wasn't the problem now, and no one expected Ryu to defeat Kim and Taekyung. Taekyung's body keeps radiating a purple aura. The life force of the people around him begins being drained to the limit. Later at the mansion, Kang tends to bake in one of the corners. The old man says that if Hwasa is gone, it means Sanjin will be coming soon. But the problem is how long it will take until Shuwan wakes up, because he's sure fighting those idiots was too much for him. Bake says he can't run away, so he'll try fighting alone. Kang warns them about going into hiding in the city instead of fighting, because there are people nearby. In Taekyung's office, he says he feels brand new. Sanjin recalls what happened in the car. Taekyung asks why he looks so lost in thought, but the secretary says it's about Jia's actions and how he's going to report to the leader. Taekyung tells him not to worry because it won't be hard, since he'll report as soon as he gets Shuwan. Sanjin thinks about this idiot, until this phone starts ringing. He answers the call and tells his subordinates to keep waiting for his signal. They inform him they found Shuwan's group, and Taekyung orders them to go without rest. In an old hotel, the group tries to rest. Ryu says something isn't right because he can't feel his glia. Kang replies that this can happen when you use too much energy at once, thinking it's already been 2 days, but he still hasn't healed. Baek tells them to abandon him, because he's going to die anyway. Kang says that's enough of that crap, and he'll be able to go back to begging for money on the streets. His friend gets angry, saying all this is his fault, but the villain comments that it's strange, because he's heard that glia can vanish when someone levels up, except his aura was already white, and he's never heard of anyone surpassing that level. Kang looks out the window, noticing they're already here. He tells Baek to stay quiet and not make a sound, because the two of them will leave while leaving Shinto here, and that's the only way to survive. The car parks right in front, and Sangjin asks where the other group is. He then walks over to the car and sees that the people inside have no life force left. He curses Taekyung until he's grabbed by the neck and locked in a chokehold. The gangster says he feels like he could fly right now. Sangjin's energy is drained while he calls for Yang. Taekyung says he's always underestimated him, but now he's learned the same lesson Hanju did, so he shouldn't be mad, since his power will take down Shuan, thinking the Crimson Moon leader will be pleased with this too. Back at the house, Kang says he's going back to see Shenyan. The man just stares at him, and the old man says he'll let him hit him for everything he did in the past. Taekyung starts banging on the door, and Kang warns they should leave now. They jump out the window, and the old man says they'll hide in the crowd to work from an advantage. In a building, a subordinate reports that apparently Sangjin and Taekyung found Ryu. Jaya asks if there's anything else, and the man says they ran away and it wasn't far from here. Then he wants to know how his mistress will handle this. The woman says she'll go there because she needs to get Shiwan first. As the day goes by, Kang orders his disciple to keep running if he doesn't want to lose his life. The executives start showing up, and the old man stays behind to fight. One of them tries to kick Kang, but gets struck. Another attacks stealthily, but Ryu hits him in the chin while thinking he can't use Glia. The people outside tell someone to call the police. One of them arrives and orders everyone to step back. The Crimson Moon executive says the officer has had a long day, but he should mind his own business instead of theirs. The officer recognizes the symbol and starts pushing all civilians away from the area. As the fight goes on, Kang tells Ryu to run from there. The protagonist glances over. They head toward an abandoned building. Kang says it's hard to deal with them while his student can't use Glia. Ryu says he's frustrated too and doesn't understand how it works. Taekyung appears there, calling out to him and saying he spent the whole day chasing him. Kang remarks that he thought he was in hell, and Ryu reacts the same way. The gangster says he's going to put an end to this once and for all. Kang charges at him, but Taekyung dodges, saying he's tired of this. He strikes the old man in the stomach, making him stagger back. Ryu gets angry, calling out to Taekyung, but the gangster reaches him. He then grabs his neck, reminding him that he would finish him quickly so he wouldn't feel pain. The protagonist tells him to cut the talk, and Taekyung replies that he's already mastered the ability to absorb Glia. Ryu's energy is completely drained and starts to dissipate into the air. The gangster asks if that was all, saying he's been stressing over nothing all this time. He then throws him to the ground, saying he's disappointed. When he's about to step on Ryu, the aura begins to take over the boy. His Glia suddenly returns, activating. The surge of energy blasts Taekyung away. Ryu gets up, his skin returning to its normal tone. Taekyung wonders what's happening, but Kang thanks the gangster because even though he had no Glia, he helped release it. Taekyung gets irritated but realizes he's never felt this aura before, not even from Yang. He wants to know what happened, because Ryu didn't even have the strength to fight him, yet now his Glia was flowing out of control. Ryu says that if he wants to live, he should apologize for the people he's killed. Taekyung shouts that he'll be the leader of the Crimson Moon one day, so he won't beg. The protagonist says he never changes as the gangster rushes at him. But with immeasurable speed, Ryu strikes Taekyung's head. His head is separated from his body in that attack. Ryu stays with Kang on top of the building. His master puts a hand on his shoulder, and the protagonist says it feels like it was yesterday. The first time he met that idiot and beat him every time. He lost all his comrades at the police station. Kang says he doesn't feel good about it, and that revenge was his way of living, but it still doesn't bring loved ones back. Jaya appears there and calls for Min. The old man turns, wanting to know if she had been watching this happen. The woman says she'll take Shawan to the leader, and he values people for their skills, so he would spare Kang. But the old man tells her to shut up because he knows better than anyone that her plan is to see Yang when she takes his life. Jaya complains that she expected more from him, and Kang taunts her about moving her knives like that. The woman throws her attacks, but the old man manages to deflect them with his hands. However, one of the knives goes behind him. Jaya moves them to change direction. The strike's close in on Kang, and he can't dodge. The woman tells him not to worry because she doesn't want to take his life now. Kang complains that it's not over yet. Jaya tries to convince him to go to the leader, but Ryu approaches the woman angrily. The woman says he should just submit already, launching her knives at the man. Ryu manages to dodge, and Jie recognizes it as Kang's distance control technique. She's struck in the face, making Kang and his student tense. The woman asks how he dares use Dokkal's technique. She then prepares to fight, with Ryu advancing as well. Kang thinks the protagonist turned the tide with his skill, but the situation isn't in his favor, because he's already used all his Glia, and in this state, he'd lose his life if even one knife hit him. The woman thinks she'll drain Ryu's blood before taking him. She then tries to strike him with a knife, telling him to get out of there. The protagonist barely dodges, and Kang realizes it was a trap. There were knives waiting behind him, and someone is hit. Jaya and Ryu are shocked to see Kang behind the protagonist. The old man had taken the knives to protect his disciple. He curses the situation for ending like this. Ryu cries out for his master and holds him. Jaya panics, asking if that bastard was crazy. But the old man only opens his mouth, smiling. The woman says this isn't right and it's not what she wanted, looking at Ryu. Then she assumes he's ruined everything and is in her way. She starts striking Ryu's back, saying he's far too bold. The protagonist tries to endure as the woman hits him over and over. Kang lets out a small sigh and calls for Jia. He asks her to let his disciple escape, saying this is his final request. The woman starts crying, asking if he got himself into this mess just to say that. Kang apologizes for everything, even for abandoning her or losing his life this way, but she should believe him when he says this, because from the moment he was born, she was the only person he ever fell in love with. The woman clenches her fist, saying he's been like this ever since she met him, always doing things his own way, and now even choosing to leave like this. Then her servant asks if she's leaving, and the woman confirms it. Time passes in that building, and Kang calls for Shiwan, telling him he should go. Leave before he ends up losing his life for nothing. Ryu sets him down, and Kang says he had a dream of taking Yang's life, and he is the last hope for that dream, so he must go and survive for one day. The master can't speak anymore, and loses his life with a smile. Ryu is in disbelief and tells him to open his eyes, hugging his master while crying, begging him not to abandon him because he has no one else. In Yang's garden, he says the names of Sangjin, Kim, and Taekyung, saying they cannot afford to increase their negligence toward Ryu. The executives gather out front with luxury cars parked. A man tells leader Jong that this fool called him here, but he'll teach him a lesson. The executives welcome everyone to the Crimson Moon General Assembly. Those men stay silent until Jong notices something behind him, and the servants greet the director of the financial sector. The man recognizes Taepyeong Yu, and another car arrives with a different plate. Choi had arrived at the location, and the men are impressed again, wondering what is about to happen here. Inside the house, everyone meets with Young. The man introduces the owners of the multinational that leads the Korean economy. Speaking of Director Yu and President Hyun-son Choi, then he says the reason he gathered the nation's leaders to join him was to announce the establishment of the Crimson Moon's new business, the Red Moon Bank. Yu and the president are surprised by this. Yang continues explaining that he will invest 1 trillion won in the private financial sector and grow it to 100 trillion to start the banking business. The executive asks how they have so much money, since it's enough to rival the banking sector. Jong says he understands the proposal but wants to know if this money can really grow that much. The leader smiles, saying he will hold on to the remaining 99 trillion for his loyal sellers and citizens who need money, thus increasing the capital. That old man thinks he'll be stuffing the pockets of those in debt to increase the funds. Director Yu calls out to him, saying that the current banking law states that the deposit limit for a commercial bank cannot exceed 10 times, and Yang says the president has already allowed it. Yu turns to the president, who mentions the temporary presidential order that permits this to happen. The director tries to argue that it's a huge privilege and wasn't even discussed with his sector. Yang says no one will grow from this and they really can't do it. But there's not an organization in this country, including the government, that the Crimson Moon wouldn't control, and they'll discuss who gets everything. He proposes that each group manage 20 trillion won. The businessman asks how he'll handle something so big, and Young says he'll provide collateral, but wants to know why not share it with the companies, and he'll speak to everyone later. Jong shouts that he can't take this anymore and is being forced to cover his costs. The leader says Leader Jong of the automotive sector is talented and grew with little. Even reaching such an age, he still works day and night to grow the company, but he worries he's pushing himself because he has a heart condition. The man suddenly feels pain in his heart. Yang mentions the file, and the old man keeps suffering. The businessman tries to run to Leader Jong, but he was already lifeless. Choi asks how he'll deal with the weight of having taken the life of a global president. Yang repeats it and questions what he means, because the president only fainted from a heart attack, and everyone there saw it. Then he orders Jie to take President Seong to the hospital. The executives carry the old man's body. Those important men look at each other. Yang says he'll assume they all agree to establish the bank. But when he looks back, a stone comes flying with someone shouting for Yang to come out there. Ryu was outside the mansion, facing some guards. The men advance with orders to capture him. The protagonist simply begins fighting them all. With the servants knocked down, he comes across Jai, who is surprised. Ryu lets out a small sigh and tells Yang to come out there right now. The servants try to attack him, but Jai orders them to stop, saying the leader was expecting him. That man tries to confront him, but Ryu keeps walking. Jaya asks if he's going to let Min lose his life for nothing. The protagonist replies that hiding in the shadows would mean his masters die for nothing. Back to the present, Yang manages to dodge the rock. He comments that he heard about Hwasa, who lost by a hair's breadth, but it's great that he came on his own. Yu asks who that guy is. President Choi says it's the man that Dr. Min was testing. Ryu and Yang lock eyes coldly. The leader offers his hand to the protagonist, saying he would give him money and power. Ryu says he didn't come there to hear that kind of thing and readies his fist, but his punch is ineffective against Yang. The man twists his body aside, calling the boy a fool, just as he expected. Ryu gets back up and tells that idiot to shut his mouth as he tries to strike again. Yang lands a blow to the protagonist's stomach. The boy unleashes his white aura and thanks him for the warm-up, but now he's going to take his life. Yang realizes he's reached Delta level, but easily dodges the attack. A strike reaches his shoulder, but he simply slides past it. Ryu's final blow is easily blocked by his palm. He thinks that his white aura doesn't work on him. Yang congratulates him for improving so quickly, but says he'll reward him for it. He releases a black aura that shocks Ryu. The protagonist is struck in the stomach by that attack. Jaya thinks she's never heard of a level above white aura. Ryu kneels on the ground, and Yang tells him he must learn to obey, but not to worry because it means his life will become better. He then orders his guards to move him carefully so as not to injure him. The executives approach the protagonist while the businessmen watch the fight. Choi thinks he was foolish to believe he could save everyone. Ryu emits his white aura, surprising the guards, but the materialization of his glia manages to pierce them. Jaya is shocked by this, and Yang laughs, saying he has surpassed human limits. Ryu tells the leader to shut his mouth. The man says he has no choice and truly wished they could be allies. He unleashes a blast of energy at the protagonist. He falls to the ground injured, unable to get up. Yang says he has no choice but to reject his offer and will simply use his blood. Jaya's dagger interrupts the fight. The leader comments that she's finally decided to show her fangs. The woman says that Dokul tried to protect this boy with his life, so she asks him to keep him alive. Yang complains that her heart is too soft, but she shouldn't worry because he doesn't intend to hurt him. Jaya asks if he'll release Ryu, but the president approaches the boy, saying he needs his blood. With it, the crimson moon, and he would be able to rule the world. The woman asks if he's going to turn the boy into some sort of medicine. Yang becomes irritated by her gaze and decides he's going to reeducate her. His hand begins forming the black aura, and Jia summons her blades, thinking she needs to attack first. The daggers are thrown, but are easily repelled by the leader. Jaya wonders how he can block her daggers so quickly, and the man is already advancing toward her. Yang gets behind the woman, striking her spine. Jaya thinks he's far too fast, and she can't follow his movements. The black aura materializes into a slash, and the woman can barely dodge. Smoke begins to fill the place, but the black aura keeps cutting through her daggers. She falters for a second, and the power closes in on Jia. However, the energy dissipates as Ryu grabs the president with all his strength. Yang says he still has enough strength to get up, but that's fine, and if he keeps acting like this, he'll have no choice but to take his life. Yang's aura begins materializing once again. Those same blades from before pierce Ryu's body. The protagonist groans as he endures, shoving Yang against the wall. Then he pulls back, breathing heavily, while the leader says it's truly bad. With immeasurable speed, he advances and points his hand at Ryu's head, materializing a sphere that strikes him. Jaya picks up a blade from the ground and says Yang should be fighting her. The leader simply says they end up biting the hand that fed them. Then he releases a black energy once again. That strike cuts everyone in half. The president manages to hide behind a rock. His guard, Song, tries to warn the president. Ryu rises once more and asks if that bastard feels nothing when taking the lives of others. His own aura was also black, and Yang is surprised for the first time. The protagonist charges at maximum speed to hit the man, who steps back slightly, but his face bleeds, making him angry that Trash would dare try to surpass his power. Ryu narrowly dodges the deadly attacks and thinks he has a chance, because he's human too, and he can see how much weaker he's getting. So he closes in on Yang to hit him in the face. Jaya is surprised because she didn't believe the protagonist could penetrate the leader's aura. Ryu thinks this is the only thing the people who cared for him ever wanted, and now his fists can reach Yang. The leader steps back but admits that he's also reached a certain level, but he unleashes his full power, telling the protagonist not to get arrogant. The materialized power approaches, and Ryu manages to land a blow on him. Yang is surprised, while the young man asks if that's all, because he's not going to let this bastard get his blood. And now he's a man who's going to lose his life. Ryu dodges Yang's palm strike and lands a knee. The leader groans in pain and tries to kick, but it's blocked. Then the protagonist lands his first hit to Yang's stomach, forcing him to step back. Jaya thinks this is like a street fight, and Shawon's punches are working with the same amount of glia. Yang forms an aura sphere and throws it at the protagonist. Ryu seems confused, but the leader tells him to go to hell. That strike pierces through the protagonist in every way possible. Yang says he never thought he'd have to put an effort against a kid like him, but he'll make sure he gets a quick farewell. Ryu is starting to fade out. The leader advances toward him and grabs his neck, saying he had fun, but he crossed the line. Jaya wonders if this is the end, since Siwon doesn't control his power that well. Ryu begins losing consciousness and feels this is his departure, but the officer appears in his dream calling for his friend. Then he apologizes for what happened, and Ryu cries at the sight of his chief. Kyung says he honestly didn't believe he could do it, and if they had more time, maybe it would have worked. Donna tells him not to say that because they gave a lot for his disciple to endure. Ryu turns, calling for his master. Kane tells him not to act like a good guy because he was bad. Donna starts arguing with him, but the old man says his disciple has done enough and didn't run away even once. Then he pats his head, saying he was truly amazing. Ryu cries and clenches his fist, promising he'll come back to apologize. Guard Song points his weapon at Yeon, firing several times but being blocked by the villain's spheres. Yeon asks if he really thought that would work. Ryu yells at him to cut the meaningless talk, surprising everyone there. He's standing even with holes in his chest. Yeon is surprised by his presence. Ryu thinks this is the power he was looking for, but it's clearer now since training with his masters. Yeon wonders what this aura is that he's never seen before, asking himself how this little fly has surpassed his magnitude. Then he says he will rebuild the nation with citizens who abuse their own ignorance, repeating that he will fix everything, until he's struck in the stomach by Yeon. That blow takes his life, and Ryu says the old man talks too much for a sinner. Yeon goes silent, and thus the final battle ends. On another day, a street is bustling as usual. Jaya comments that her disciple hasn't been able to feel glia since that day. The protagonist tells her to leave because he's working. She complains about this idiot doing that. In an alley, a man tries to take money from an old man who only apologizes for everything. Ryu interrupts, telling him that's enough. The man asks who the hell he is, but the protagonist gives him a menacing look, telling him to think about it. That delinquent leaves, and Ryu tells the man to speak up next time so he can step in as an officer. With the murmurs of that day in the city, the protagonist walks calmly. Accompanied by the souls of his masters, he simply tightens his fist, and thus ends Ryu's story.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.